Okay, we are back live from Annapolis, the Environment and Transportation Committee. I am, as always, your cheerful and friendly chairman, Kumar Barve. I'm joined by the equally cheerful and friendly vice chairman, Dana Stein, and the lovable crew of misfits that are the Environment and Transportation Committee. Let me read the order of the bills, because it's not strictly in numerical order. The first bill is going to be House Bill 1343, Delegate Luedtke, and we will be joined by Delegates Johnson, Kerr, and Kipke from the HGO Committee. The bill is jointly assigned. Following that will be the two highway user revenue bills, House Bill 410, which is introduced by the Speaker, and 1187, introduced by the infamous Delegate Anderton himself. Then we will go to House Bill 73, Delegate R. Lewis, House Bill 535, which is a local Prince George's County, a local Montgomery County bill. House Bill 813, another local Montgomery County bill. House Bill 1081, Delegate Boyce. House Bill 1296, Delegate Jalisi. Two bills from Delegate Motz, 1303 and 1314. Then House Bill 1333, Delegate Lehman, and the final bill of the afternoon will be House Bill 1383, Delegate Hornberger. We have roughly 60 witnesses, and of course the committee has subcommittee meetings, and we have a lot of work to do today, and 60 witnesses is not a small list, but it's not a bone crusher either. And so with that, let me welcome back to the committee the Majority Leader of the House of Delegates, Delegate Eric Luedtke. Welcome. You've got 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring before you House Bill 1343. To explain the background of this bill, it has been longstanding practice for the state and actually most states and the federal government to require disclosure of campaign contributions because we believe that the public has a compelling interest in knowing who is trying to influence public decision making. The same ought to be true for major state contractors that are promoting new taxpayer funded projects through the funding of advocacy organizations. In the absence of contribution disclosure requirements, there's an opportunity for a practice known as astroturfing, where an advocacy organization masks the funding of a public campaign to create the appearance of a grassroots movement when in truth support comes from a narrow group of special interests that have a financial interest in a project. So House Bill 1343 requires organizations who receive taxpayer dollars through state contracts over a certain size to disclose their contributions to advocacy groups lobbying the public about major state projects. The reporting requirement is placed on the donors, not the advocacy organization, and the bill further allows the State Board of Elections to conduct routine audits of certain advocacy groups to ensure that major state contractors are accurately reporting their contributions. SBE would not be permitted to release the information collected through the audit, but it provides an avenue for checking to make sure that the bill is being complied with. This bill, essentially, it's a good government bill. It's a transparency bill that allows the public in Maryland to know whether the people advocating for major taxpayer-funded projects in their community have a financial stake in the project in question. So I see this as a pretty straightforward good government measure, and I would urge a favorable report.
All right, Delegate, we have only one other person who's signed up on the bill to testify, and that is Champ McCullough, who signed up in opposition. So let's hear him, and then I will entertain questions from the committee. Champ, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Champ McCullough on behalf of Maryland AGC, a trade association for commercial construction companies. This bill, however it's regarded, is simply an assault on free speech by contractors. There is no logical reason why a contractor, a bidder perhaps, should not have the absolute freedom without having to register with a government agency to hire a PR firm to promote it. I mean, how many times have you seen promotions by a variety of industry companies, not just construction? That's a normal part of doing business. And as far as disclosure, because of the way the definitions are posited in the bill, the information is not held in confidence. The information is dispersed to the public. That's a requirement in the bill. So there's really very little protection that is given contractor who wishes to express its opinion. Let me give you an example. I'm a bidder on a state project. I have a website. I want to reflect on the website all of the good things that I can do for this particular project. So I hire a PR firm, an advocacy organization per the definitions in the bill, to spruce up my website and put in glowing reports of how good a company I am. That is not evil. That is something done all of the time in industry, not just in state contracting. This bill is simply inappropriate and puts a burden on contractors. It is intended to chill their speech. This is a contribution that is equivalent to speech, as the Supreme Court has recognized. So I would urge the committee to give this bill an unfavorable report and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, first question goes to Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Notwithstanding the multiple incorrect legal arguments that we just heard, I'm going to ask Delegate Ludke if he's had a chance to read the opposition's testimony. And my question is, do you have a response?
I have not had the chance to read the opposition's testimony, unfortunately. But, I think it's a falsehood to say that the bill restricts speech, just like it would be a falsehood to say that campaign finance reporting restricts the speech of campaign donors. This is simply a disclosure bill, simply requires disclosure when contributions are made by major contractors to advocacy organizations campaigning in favor of a new taxpayer-funded project. And it also doesn't infringe on the associational rights of those advocacy organizations, because the contractor is the reporting entity here and not the advocacy group. So I believe this bill is fairly straightforward. It's simply a transparency bill.
Thank you, Delegate Ludke.
Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to say that I love this bill is really quite an understatement. I mean, I think this is so important. I think this happens in other areas, not just contracting. Is that right, Delegate Ludke?
We require reporting on campaign contributions. We require reporting by lobbyists. We require reporting in a number of ways. And again, it's just to give the public the information they need to understand what influence is being applied in the political system.
Right. And then, Mr. McCall, how does reporting about it interfere with your right to speak? And why wouldn't it be appropriate for it? I don't remember it being exposed to the public, but why wouldn't it be appropriate for the public to know who's spending money on government contracting advertising?
The issue, I think, is that contractors should be entitled, without having to report to a government agency, that they are hiring an advocacy organization, which includes any PR firm, to promote themselves. I mean, that is innocent behavior. And there is no reason why that exercise of free speech ought to be conditioned on reporting to the State Board of Elections and run the risk of substantial fines and even imprisonment for—
You're still allowed to speak, right?
But the effect of the bill is to chill your willingness to speak, because you don't want to get enmeshed in this, in the terms of this bill.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I don't see it that way, but thank you.
Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Ludke, I'm sitting here just running this thing through my mind. When you say that grassroots organizations, when corporations or contractors would give donations to grassroots organizations to try to move a project forward or the zoning. Could you reverse that around to where maybe there is a state or a local project that is, on the books to get built, to where a grassroots organization came out in opposition to something that would benefit the state and the community immensely, but yet they're being funded by a group or another group of people that had some had competition on their mind, or was good for that group if that project didn't get built. So couldn't you flip this around on both sides, the pro and the con?
Yeah, it's a good point. So on page 2 of the bill, at the top, at line 1, is the definition of advocacy organization, and it says advocacy organization means a person, including an entity organized under Section 501c4, the Internal Revenue Code, that makes disbursements for public communications relating to a major state project. So, if a major contractor was essentially astroturfing with a C4 group to try to oppose one of their opponent's projects, I would argue that that would be included under this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Johnson from HGO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Lukey, does this bill stop a contractor from making contributions, stop an advocacy group from advocating, or change in any way the way they do business currently?
No, it just requires reporting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Lutke, this bill, I just want to emphasize and make sure I'm correct. This bill just applies to companies and corporations that are doing business with the state, right? Not all corporations or companies, right?
That's correct. And actually, not all corporations doing business with the state. It has to be a major state contractor under the definitions as a person who enters into a contract or an agreement to complete a major state project. And a major state project is defined as in the bill as a single procurement contract with a single unit involving cumulative consideration of at least $1 million. So this is only large scale contractors.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just, before I recognize Delegate Healy, my company picks up hazardous waste for DHMH, and we have a 5-year contract. And I think our cumulative revenues over the course of a single year would be $70,000. Does your bill apply to my company?
It would not, because it only comes into effect if the procurement contract with a single unit involves cumulative consideration of at least $1 million.
$1 million total or per year?
It's based on the contract and the definition of the bill. So $1 million under the contract. So depending on the length of the contract, that would potentially come into play.
So contracts typically are written in the following way. Let's say it's a $500,000 contract with add-ons, 3 years of add-ons of roughly $1 million each, or let's say $500,000 each. So are you counting the initial contract or the initial contract plus the add-ons?
It's the cumulative amount of the contract. I'd have to consult DLS staff how we would interpret potential contract extensions, whether that would count under this language as a separate contract.
Okay, and my company is also a member of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. If they lobby, do I have to report my fees that I pay to the Chamber of Commerce?
It only applies in the case of an advocacy organization that makes disbursements for public communications related to a major state project. And so the major state project would be a procurement contract with the consideration over $1 million cumulative.
See, my concern is there are a lot of small companies that are members of the Chamber of Commerce or organizations like them. And I believe that the Chamber ought to have to report that they are lobbying, but sure. I wouldn't want every small business in the state to have to make a report.
I wouldn't read it that way, because this is intended to be narrowly construed to major state contractors, not every small business in the state.
Okay. Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much, I apologize. I got in late because I was clicking on the wrong link. It took me a minute to figure it out. I missed some of the introduction of this bill, but my question, from what I've been hearing, is about how would this, or would it relate to the community benefits that sometimes get negotiated when there's a project put into a community. Sometimes somebody wants to build something in a community, and they'll reach out to the local boys club or the girls club, or maybe the community associations nearby, to see how to mitigate the effect of their project in the neighborhood. How would this interact with that kind of thing?
It wouldn't.
Because even if they were trying to build something that was on a state contract, or they were.
So, for example, if I'm a major contractor and I'm, as part of the contract, giving money to the Boys and Girls Club to start a new athletic program or something, I'm not paying them for public communications related to the major state project. So those types of disbursements would not fall under this bill.
So I'm just concerned because, they have these community associations have newsletters, and they circulate them among themselves and to the broader community about whether they like this project coming into their community or not. And I'm just thinking about how the unintended consequence of something like this catching people that are trying to negotiate with the community. But you can't do that without communicating. You can't. It's impossible. So.
Yeah, unless for example, you mentioned like a newsletter, a community newsletter from an HOA, unless the contractor is specifically paying that HOA to do the public communication, this would not come into effect.
All right. Okay. Well, it's an interesting concept. I'm going to look closely at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to understand the ramifications of the bill in total. So if I'm a major contractor and I do my own PR in-house, I'm not affected by this bill. It's only if I hire a third party to do my PR.
That's correct. An advocacy organization has defined in the bill.
So it just seems like a workaround. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, this isn't for companies doing PR about the company. It's for paying to advocate with the public for, or I guess against, a particular project to try to build public support for that project.
That's correct. Let's posit a hypothetical. There's a proposal to build a bridge between St. Mary's County and Somerset County, and one of the state contractors that's a major bidder on it decides to fund a C4 advocacy organization, People for Southern Crossing, right, and contribute significant money to it. That business would still be able to create that organization to fund it. They would just have to report that they were funding it, so the public would have that knowledge.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 1343. Let's proceed to House Bill 410, which is, I presume, being introduced by, this is a speaker on behalf of the department. So I guess Jim Ports is going to be introducing the bill. So Jim, welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee.
Thank you.
You got four.
I believe Andrew Castley will introduce the bill, actually.
Oh, I see.
I realize I take second fiddle there, but
no, Andrew, welcome back to your old home. Well, we miss you, man.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman Kumar Pravaka Barve and Vice Chair Stein and esteemed, highly educated members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. It is I, Andrew Castley, who come back before you today to present House Bill 410, which is going to be the better of the two highway user bills that you hear today. Joining me on my virtual panel is, as you've already mentioned, Secretary Jim Ports and Jacqueline Hartman from the Department of Transportation. And so I will be brief with my comments and turn it over to them. essentially House Bill 410 is expected to deliver $83 million annually to local jurisdictions and additional funding for much needed local transportation infrastructure projects. In addition, this bill ensures transparency and accountability for those funds by the local entities. And with that, I'll turn it over to Secretary Ports to go into more specifics on the bill.
Andrew, it's always good to see you. You're always welcome here. Jim, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Stein, and members of the committee. For the record, again, my name is Jim Ports, Secretary of Maryland Department of Transportation, and I'm here today in support of House Bill 410. I want to thank the administration and Andrew Castley for introducing the bill, and which will repeal the sunset on the current HUR funding levels. As mentioned, current law reduces the amount of HUR capital grants that our local jurisdictions will receive beginning FY25 from 13.5% to 9.6%. These funds serve as a critical tool for local jurisdictions to provide road and bridge maintenance, and it's important to note that this increase in local transportation aid does not require the elimination of any projects in MDOT's CTP or Consolidated Transportation Program, and nor does it have any negative impacts on the scope, design, or scheduling of any of the existing projects. As some revenues like the titling and corporate income tax are recovering faster than forecasted, this allows the administration and MDOT to prioritize and stabilize the HUR funding without impacting the CTP. I do want to note that any increase above and beyond the 13.5 share to locals beginning in FY25 would have a significant impact on MDOT's capital program. We would have to remove over $1 billion of capital funding currently programmed in the CTP. For these reasons, I respectfully request the committee grant House Bill 410 a favorable report. And as was mentioned by Andrew, I also have with me today's MDOT Chief Financial Officer, Jacqueline Hartman, and we'd be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Does Jackie want to testify, or is she just here for to answer questions?
No, I think she's just here to answer any questions. She's our fiscal expert, if you will.
Okay, well, we're going to go through all the witnesses and then we'll entertain questions. Let's go next to Laura Price with MACO. Laura, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Barve, Vice Chair Stein, and members of this committee. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you. I am Laura Price, President of the Maryland Association of Counties and member of the Talbot County Council. I am here to testify favorable with amendments on HB 410. I will give my full testimony on the merits of full restoration when the next bill, HB 1187, is called. But as you're aware, there are a few different bills that have been introduced this session, and each one is an opportunity to restore the funding back to where it was over a decade ago. There are differences in each proposal, and MACO's amendment on each one is full restoration to make them conform to HB 1187. This bill has good intentions. We appreciate the sponsorship, and it recognizes the need to remove the sunset provision so that we don't end up back for the counties at 1.5% of revenues. MACO appreciates that it makes the current percentage permanent, but it is not full restoration, which the local governments are desperately in need of. I thank the leadership for introducing this bill and urge a favorable with amendments report on HB 410. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's turn next to Warren Edwards with Talbot County. I don't know what your position is, but welcome to the committee, Warren. You have 2 minutes. Is Warren Edwards with us?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Members, I agree with Mrs. Price. We 100% support and are grateful for the committee for bringing this up to HB 410 and the opportunity to speak about the desperate need to reinstate these funds and the road conditions that all of our rural and county roads are in. It's become more than just an issue of condition of roads. It's become a big issue of safety. You know, you got bigger fire trucks, ambulances, dump trucks, and tractor trailers. And if we don't do something to repair these roads, we're never going to get caught up we desperately need to improve this, and I will speak more about this in detail with HB 1187.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Angelica Bailey with MML.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, committee members. Angelica Bailey, Director of Government Relations for the Maryland Municipal League. First, we want to thank Governor Hogan and his administration for putting this bill in. We know infrastructure and highway user revenues has always been a priority of his, and we really appreciate his attention to this issue, but we are favorable with amendments. MACO and MML are very much aligned this year. We fully support removing the sunset provision. It's got to go for lots of reasons, but it just isn't enough. Local governments have been drastically underfunded for 10 plus years. It was supposed to be 1, it's been 12. And in the meantime, essential road repairs have not happened, or the funding for them has had to be diverted from other areas. So I know you're all very, very familiar with this issue. I'm happy to answer questions. I won't take up more of your time, but we think that, this is the right thing to do. Now is the right time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mike Sanderson. I don't think anybody has signed up in opposition. So, Mike.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, I'm Michael Sanderson with the Maryland Association of Counties. As you've heard from Madam President, from MACO's president, while we have supported this bill with amendments, I'll just point out, we very much are delighted to have the administration and the department's support on this restoration. We know it's a priority for the governor. We know so because the governor put in a full restoration bill in 2015, his first opportunity to be before the General Assembly on this issue. The administration and the department embraced the idea of let's get back to full highway user restoration. It's going to take some time to get there, but by the year 2024, we think we can have full restoration intact. So we've got 2 different bills before the committee where we're suggesting amendments on this one. The full restoration bill, I think, is our local government focus, but we're delighted to be philosophically in tune with the department and the administration that this is the right direction to go. Thank you all.
We have a question from Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much. Question is for MML and MACO together, because as you know, when you talk about full restoration to what it was, whatever, 15 years ago, there were some disputes between MML and MACO about the distribution to the municipalities going through the counties, and that was changed so that the municipalities would get their grants directly from the state, I believe. What is your position now? Are you on the same page in what you want out of highway user to be when we're finished with this process this year? And I'll ask Michael and Angelica.
Sure. I'm happy to take the really quick answer. And yes, we are in complete lockstep that we think the bill you're about to hear later today with Delegate Anderton and a long list of bipartisan sponsors, what that does is it puts the percentages for Baltimore City, 23 counties, and the municipalities back in the same proportion where they were back before the big cuts in 2009. And we're all in agreement that those are the right percentages, that the pie is right, the slices are right, and we are all on board.
Thank you. Angelica, do you agree with that?
Me too.
Thank you.
Okay, there appear to be no further questions. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 410. Let's proceed to House Bill 1187. Delegate Anderton, you're up. 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members. It's good to be presenting this legislation. Again, I would like to rebut the previous presenter about the 2 bills. I'd like to remind him that in high school sports, you have the junior varsity plays before the varsity. And so that's what we have here today. So House Bill 1187 is a bill that we promised back in 2018 when this committee came together and we passed the initial long-awaited highway user revenue increase that sunsets in FY24. So this bill we knew was coming, and it's here before us today to remove the sunset and to restore funding back to its original intent and to help our cities, towns, and counties do what's best. The streets that every one of us use are our neighborhood streets. They are the most vital streets to our success as communities and families. And so it's important that we invest back into our local infrastructure, our bridges, roads, sidewalks. I have a little visual aid behind me today. This road is not just some random Google pic. This is a street project I did when I was mayor in Delmar. When we did not have the full highway user revenue allotment, we had to scrape, borrow, and plead and use coupons to get it done. And so it is my hope after the passage of this bill that no other mayor has to go through that again when it comes to restoring their neighborhoods. So enjoy the testimony that's about to be laid before you. We will, of course, talk soon, and I respectfully ask for a favorable report on this bill. Also, there were a lot of folks who wanted to co-sponsor. We were unable to because we were still very separated at the beginning of session. So if anybody would like to get on this train and ride, you're welcome to. You have my absolute blessing. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to turn next to Mayor Brandon Scott of the City of Baltimore. Mr. Mayor, welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee, sir. You have 2 minutes. Is Brandon Scott with us?
He just joined the waiting room and is now entering the call.
Okay, we'll wait for him.
Looks like you have him now.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Apologies. I was testifying in Ways and Means.
That's okay. We are happy to have you, and you do have a 2-minute time limit. So there you go. Happy to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I am Mayor Brandon Scott, testifying in full support of HB 1187. We all know that during the Great Recession, highway user revenues were cut, rightfully so, back then in 2007. But despite the prolonged economic recovery and stabilization of the Transportation Trust Fund, we have not seen that return back to the levels that the city and the counties have seen. And no jurisdiction has been more negatively impacted than Baltimore City. We historically have received the largest share of HUR allocation because the city is the only jurisdiction that has to maintain all of its roads. The state highway doesn't do any of our roads. However, I think it's important to note that the cumulative loss for us for our highway user revenue is $900 million. That is leading to crumbling roads, unfilled potholes, unsafe bridges, all of the things that we know are a need for every single jurisdiction across this state. And with the recent passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the restoration of HUR allocation to local governments is critical to the need for local matching to tap in those federal infrastructure dollars that would allow the city, all of our counties to do what all of our residents want us to do, and that is to repair our ancient and old and failing infrastructure. We always say that local government is where the rubber meets the road. Really, right now, we're talking about where the asphalt meets the road. We would love to be able to do a lot more. And through this bill, it will allow us to do something that it crosses all party lines, crosses all economical lines, crosses all race lines. And that is to be able to repave roads, build better streets, build smarter streets, repair bridges, the things that we all know we need to do. And for those reasons and those reasons alone, I request a favorable report on HB 1187.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Let me next turn to Jan Gardner, the executive of Frederick County. Madam Executive, welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair. I want to just clarify that we are now on HB 1187.
We're on 1187.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today in support of House Bill 1187. And my thanks to Delegate Anderton for his leadership on this legislation. You have my written testimony, which makes the case for the full restoration of highway user revenues to the counties, who have the lion's share of the responsibility to maintain the roads that crisscross our state. In Frederick County, we're responsible for the maintenance of over 1,300 miles of centerline roadway, which means that the county, because we have 1-lane and 2-lane roads, has about 2,800 miles of single lanes of roadway to maintain. So to put that into context, if these miles of roads were laid out in a row, this is the equivalent miles of roadways you could travel in order to drive from the State House here in Annapolis to downtown Los Angeles. Likely a few hundred miles to spare, actually, so you could stop to get something to eat or to stay overnight. I'm not sure how many bridges you traverse on this trip across the country, but we maintain over 400 bridges. The cumulative loss to Frederick County of highway user funds totals more than $173 million, resulting in a need to defer projects that were critical to our county residents in terms of their access to services and to their quality of life, and that are important to our county's economic vibrancy and growth. Certainly, transportation is something everyone cares about. We have delayed improvements to one of our busy county arteries, Gas House Pike, which has a very high average daily traffic rate, and we're forced to make lower cost interim repairs to a bridge project on this road, so we could defer its full replacement. I very much appreciate the emergency appropriation in 2018 to fund infrastructure needs. I think now is the time to fully restore the highway user revenue to local governments to ensure that we can provide safe and modern public infrastructure to better serve our residents and to support our economic growth. So I respectfully ask for your support and a favorable report for for House Bill 1187.
Thank you very much, Madam Executive. Next, let's hear from Judd Ashman, the mayor of the awesome city of Gaithersburg. Judd?
Chairman Barvey, Vice Chair Stein, members of the committee. I'm Judd Ashman, Mayor of Gaithersburg, and I'm here to stand with our colleagues at Maryland Municipal League and at MACO in support of House Bill 1187. In addition to removing the sunset, which is really important in FY24, what's even more important is the full restoration of these revenues to municipalities to their historic levels. Since the big cut in 2009, we estimate that our city lost between $7.5 to $9 million, which with a city our size and a budget our size, that's real money. The loss of these funds increased our deferred maintenance costs and significantly delayed new road projects to support Gaithersburg's fast growing population and business community. The annual grants in recent years have been helpful to our city, and we thank you guys for the role you guys have played in that, but we cannot realistically rely on them from year to year. The cost of labor and materials for road maintenance and construction continues to rise. And the amounts that these grants offer are simply insufficient. So as a result, planning and budgeting for the city's transportation projects has proven to be problematic. And this is the time we have some opportunity with state budget surplus and infrastructure dollars flowing in. So for all the reasons above, we respectfully request the committee grant the bill a favorable report. And thank you for your consideration and for all you do for our state.
Thank you, and congratulations on becoming a grandfather, Judd.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next we'll hear from Mayor Jacob Day of the city of Salisbury. Jacob, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Chairman Barvey, Vice Chair Stein, members of the committee, thank you so much for your time and attention. As my colleagues have said, serving as a local elected official, and in my case, also president of the Maryland Municipal League, I recognize the value of empowering our municipalities by providing us with resources to effectively and efficiently serve Marylanders right here at home at the local level. And this bill is essential as it will help ensure that municipalities continue to receive fair compensation for vital repairs and transportation and infrastructure projects. Unless House Bill 1187 is enacted, the municipal share of highway user revenues will be slashed, reverting back to 0.4% of the state transportation allocation. That negative impact would result from this loss of funding and prove to be catastrophic to the 157 municipalities across Maryland. As noted in the fiscal note, it's imperative to understand what this bill does and doesn't do. What it does not do is affect the overall transportation trust fund expenditures, doesn't affect revenues, there's no effect on small businesses or our citizens. But what it does do is keep our roads paved by empowering and funding counties and municipalities across our state. The local share of highway user revenue is updated to a more equitable, effective, and efficient number in service to Marylanders across each of our jurisdictions. And finally, under current law, Without action, our 157 municipalities would compete for what amounts to less than 0.5% after the sunset in FY25. After House Bill 1187 is signed into law, our municipalities would receive 2.6% of highway user revenues. So you've got lots of mayors, lots of executives, local leaders here today, led by our former mayor and my delegate, Carl Anderton, sponsor of the bill. And they're all here today because what we know is that we must stand united on this issue. And in 2022, we do. But I also want to mention that
if you could start to wind it up, Mr. Mayor, the committee would appreciate that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The citizens of Maryland, when they go to the pump and they pay gas taxes, they do so under the promise once made that they're paying to repair all roads in Maryland. And today, with a favorable report on House Bill 1187, that promise can be restored.
Thank you very much. Next, let's hear from Laura Price with MACO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and friends of this committee. Thanks again for the opportunity to come before you. Once again, I'm Laura Price, president of MACO and member of the Talbot County Council, testifying in strong support of HB 1187. You're familiar with this issue and you're hearing from my colleagues testifying in favor of full restoration. And throughout this hearing, I would like to make a few points as well. Although local governments are still on a starvation budget for their own local roads, county residents still pay their share at the pump and fully expect the gas tax to pay for filling potholes and maintaining local roads. But it doesn't have to be this way. This is the year to fix it, to restore what was previously funded for 40 years at 30%. These are critical dollars for local governments who maintain 83% of our state's road miles, 5 out of every 6 road miles. In my home county of Talbot, we had been receiving over $3 million a year and then received a low of only $160,000. While our county appreciates the slight increase in 2018, we're still only receiving 20% of what we did before the cuts. We have a cumulative loss of $34 million. And while I may not have as many zeros at the end of my budget as some of the larger counties do, it does have the same impact. To be clear, there are no new funds or taxes at play here, just the right allocation of existing resources to correct a diversion of these funds from their intended purpose during the very difficult recession-driven budget years. What does this mean for every county? We had to delay critical safety projects and defer maintenance. We struggled to fund the services that our citizens expect, with significantly less tax dollars coming in. And on top of it, we lost millions in roads funding, so we had to use our general revenues to fix our roads. And often we had to choose, do we give extra support to our schools? Can we afford to have more deputies to protect us? Can we afford to hire another paramedic to save a life? Or do we fund a roadway project to keep us all safe?
If you could start to wrap up.
All set. Your partners in local government are ready to get back to work, but we need your help. So I urge a favorable report on HB 1187, which will benefit us all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me next welcome Woody Barnes to the Environment and Transportation Committee. Woody, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes. Is Woody Barnes with us?
He just needs to unmute.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you again and good afternoon. My name is Woody Barnes. I'm the director of the Somerset County Roads and Waterways. And I personally would like to thank you for the opportunity on behalf of Somerset County to speak in support of House Bill 1187. Like all of the counties today that are providing testimony, Somerset County has felt a tremendous impact from the highway user shortfalls over the last 15 years, jeopardizing the integrity of our more than 351 miles worth of roads, that we've seen a 75% reduction in road resurfacing projects. Recently, we received the reports back from the Federal Highway Administration biannual bridge inspections, where 5 of our 24 bridges have received a severe or critical condition requiring replacement. Certainly, we've seen a decline in our roads department equipment as well as our fleet. But more importantly, we've also saw a reduction in staff. In 2014, we saw that we were down to as few as 10 members of the crews working on the roads within the county, maintaining 351. So you can imagine the struggles that it was to respond to emergency situations and to provide everyday maintenance to that with such short staff. Again, while in recent years, Somerset County has seen some increases within highway user revenues, we're still at only 22% of where we were prior to fiscal late 2008. Certainly these increases have been appreciative, but have had very little impact on the county's ability to meet our roadway needs. And we've seen that trickle down effect throughout all of the county infrastructure. Unfortunately, if you ride through Somerset County today, unfortunately, it looks practically the same today as it did 15 years ago. We've not seen the economical growth within the county, but we've had to absorb all the impacts of the rising fuel prices, construction prices, higher wages, and everyday cost of living throughout the county. Somerset County can't begin.
Woody, if you could wrap up your testimony, the committee would appreciate that.
Somerset County can begin to convey to you the importance, the positive impacts of reestablishing the highway user funds. And we're excited about working with you in this opportunity. And thank you for your consideration and for a favorable report on House Bill 1187.
Thank you very much. Let's next welcome an old friend to the committee, Councilwoman Odette Ramos from the city of Baltimore. Odette, great to see you in your capacity as a council member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's wonderful to see everybody again. And in my new role, I really appreciate the opportunity to testify on House Bill 1187, and I urge a very favorable report. This is a very important bill for Baltimore. As Mayor Scott said, the cumulative impact that this has had of not having these revenues at fully leveraged has been, $900 million. And I provided in my testimony a diagram that shows that our deferred maintenance is $1.3 billion. So we would have been able to maintain our roads and bridges pretty much with what we need from this. So we really request a favorable report. The other point that I want to make is that Baltimore is the only jurisdiction where we maintain all of our state roads. And so the allocation is extremely important for that reason, but also because even though our residents do pay at the pump, we also are the central hub of the state. And so many people are using our roads to, come into work every day, to enjoy our cultural amenities, and to get the greatest healthcare in the world. And so this allocation is extremely important to us. It will bring us an additional $56 million once it's fully restored, and it will help us a lot. The City Council passed a resolution on Monday to fully support this legislation. And so I am urging your favorable report on HB 1187. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Always great to see you, Odette.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Let's next turn to Warren Edwards, Talbot County. Warren, welcome back. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I agree with everyone that's testified. Talbot County has 372.3 lane miles. So center line over, if you double that, it's over 744 miles. We have the same staff that we had 15 years ago. So we're understaffed, underfunded, but yet we're still doing our own paving projects in-house. We have desperate need to do repairs and widen some roads that are to this day 9 foot wide. You're running ambulances and fire trucks and dump trucks and tractor trailers. You can't stop them from using the road, but we are responsible for keeping them safe and maintaining them. So I am support 100% of House Bill 1187, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, let's turn to Lenny Pfeffer. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Lenny.
Yes, sir, you did, Mr. Chair.
Okay, with Dorchester County. Welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members. My name is Lenny Pfeffer. I'm the councilman for the 4th District of Dorchester County. I come here in support of House Bill 1187, along with my colleagues from around the state. Dorchester County, we have over 600 miles of roadway. Most of that is tar and chip, mostly because of the cost. We get thousands to start replacing that, but the cost when the highway user funds ended, it was too cost prohibitive. So currently, right now in Dorchester County, it costs us roughly $22,000 to tar and chip 1 mile, while it costs $155,000 to asphalt 1 mile of roadway. Prior to 2008, we had over 40 employees in our Public Works Roads Department. Now we have under 20 because of the cuts that we've had to make. That handles repairs to our bridges, roads, cross pipes, and ditches. A lot of that's due to saltwater intrusion in the southern area of our county, as well as farm equipment running over the north area as well. Before 2008, Dorchester was getting over $4 million a year. In 2008, that went down to 200,000. Yeah, you can make that correct. $4 million a year, we went down to 200,000 on that. It's taken 14 years to come back 25% to just over $1 million. And while that may not seem like a lot to some places, our overall tax revenue for the county is $66 million. $22 million of that comes off to go to our education apportionment, which leaves us with $44 million to run the county for the year. $4 million of highway user funds, which is what we previously were getting, is 10% of our operating budget for the year. I'm not trying to say my situation is any better or any worse. I'm just standing in support of House Bill 1187 with the rest of the state, encouraging a favorable report back from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, let's turn to Angelica Bailey with MML. Angelica, welcome back. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, everyone. Again, for the record, Angelica Bailey, Maryland Municipal League. Very, very, very much in support. First, we want to give a big thank you to Delegate Anderton and Senator McCray for their leadership here. And this has been a long conversation. I know many of you have had your time as the main sponsor of this bill in the past, so our thanks to you as well. You know, more than 60 co-sponsors on this bill this year. It's exciting. We know you're familiar with the issue. You know, I won't belabor the budget cuts or the impact on our communities. I know you've already heard a lot about that today and probably more to come. If you want more detail, I would direct you to MML's written testimony. We've got some great letters and pictures from some of our members that show the impact on the ground, no pun intended. But, you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's an election year. We have a state surplus. We've got federal infrastructure money coming. This is the right thing to do. Now is the time to do it. Thank you.
All righty. Next up, Adam, you know, Adam, I always mispronounce your name because it's got all these C's and Z's and Y's and in it. Adam from the city of Havre de Grace, please pronounce your name so this ignorant delegate can know how to properly pronounce it.
I'm sure he would love to teach you if he was here.
Ah, okay. Well, we'll come back to him and see if he jumps in later. Randy Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Randy Guy, Commissioner President of St. Mary's County, Maryland, and we are fully in support of HB 1187. St. Mary's County spends approximately $1.1 million annually for snow removal. Potholes, culvert replacements are repaired by county operating budget funds, and all maintenance and repair is performed by our county staff. St. Mary's County has approximately 1,322 lane miles, 1,662 county road miles. Our local budget for asphalt overlay is $3 million annually, which equates to coverage for 17 to 20 miles per year. This means we are operating on a 80-year schedule of overlay on roads that will fail within 15 to 20 years. In fiscal year 2009, St. Mary's County received $6,564,822 in highway user revenue. In fiscal year 2022, St. Mary's County received $612,135 as of November 2021. We simply cannot keep up with the drastic highway user revenue cuts of millions of dollars. Our residents deserve better. Our roads are headed actually in a disaster status. It is time we put these funds back to work in our county and in every hometown. Please, we ask that you do a favorable for 1187 and support this highway user fund. Respond back to us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, let's turn to Mike Sanderson. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee members. Great thanks to the many members of this committee who've been supporters, lead sponsors, and advocates for this restoration. You've heard the most compelling testimony from all the people at home who've talked about their roads, their bridges, and their local infrastructure, and that's the most important thing for you to hear. I just want to connect the dots on one particular piece of this. Where does this fit into the state puzzle? And just as a reminder, this bill is not an increase in tax structure. It's not an increase in tolls. All this is doing is putting back the slices of the pie where they were back before 2009. It was the Great Recession. It was a crisis. It was understandable that a short-term fix had to be made. But here we are 12 years later with that bad policy still lingering from tough times. I will say that this is the opportunity you've got for a smooth landing with this issue that's been a priority for so long because of federal infrastructure funds. This is what's different this year than 2 or 4 or 6 years ago. You have the opportunity to pass this bill, get back to full restoration for FY25, and have the projects in today's CTP stay on target because the federal government has given resources to Maryland and every state, recognizing how important infrastructure is. We've got an opportunity to have our cake and eat it too. This is the year to do it. We really, really welcome and appreciate your support.
Thank you very much. Next, let's hear from Bruce Bariano on behalf of Queen Anne's and Washington County.
And Ocean City, Maryland, too.
And Ocean City, of course.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be here. You've heard a lot of the arguments and all the testimony. I did want to, on behalf of the 3 political subdivisions I represent, weigh in as well. It really is about fairness. Years ago when the contribution was diminished greatly, it was the state did not have a lot of money. The state now is in much better shape, and I think they will be in better shape for times to come. You're all government officials. Some of you came out of local government. Now you're at the state level, and I think you should all work together and share the resources that the state has. Everyone benefits, and it strengthens the state, and it's the right thing to do, and I would urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you are muted.
Am I muted? How did I do that? Next, let's turn to Stephen Wantz with Carroll County. Stephen, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Mr. Chair, good afternoon. Delegate Anderton, thank you very much. And also a thank you to Senator McCray. All the members of the committee, thank you for listening today. I'm Stephen Wantz, Carroll County Commissioner and a member of the MACO board. This critical funding was stripped from us beginning in around 2008. And in Carroll County created a devastating hole in our budget, growing worse over the last 14 years, forcing us to divert funds from other critical areas. To put it in perspective, in Carroll County in 2007, we received $14.4 million. In FY23, we are at $5 million for a difference of $9.4 million. Our cumulative loss is an astounding $151 million. We have 988 miles of roadway to maintain here in Carroll. And in addition, the Maryland Department of Transportation and the State Highway Administration and our county have swapped several roadways over the last several years, assuming the maintenance and ownership of what was previously state-owned roadways. And these agreements were made based on the HUR funds at the time, with the expectation that those dollars would continue. Pavement preservation creates significant and challenging funding methods just to keep up. And now add the current costs. And by the way, liquid asphalt has increased $60 per ton since January, and our difficulties continue. So you've heard it. You've heard what everyone has had to say. I'm going to just add me too to all of that. I will say that I'm a 47-year career and volunteer firefighter. And my message as an elected has always been that public safety should be our #1 priority. You have a chance to partner with us, the counties, the municipalities, to fix this and restore our funding for this critical public safety issue, safe and efficient transportation wherever you go in this great state. So thank you. and I and the rest of us in Carroll and across the state ask for a favorable report on HB 1187. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Let's turn to Denny Taveras with Prince George's County Council. Denny, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes. Is Denny with us?
Yes, she is.
Yes, she is. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Barb. I'm a silent admirer. And my name is Denny Taveras. I am the District 2 County Council member for Prince George's County, and the county with the highest number of municipalities of any county in the state of Maryland. Since 2007, more than 12 years ago, funding to local government, as you know, to maintain and restore local roads and bridges was drastically cut due to the Great Recession, where Prince George's County had a cumulative loss of $381 million in funding. Our county borders Washington, D.C., and is home to the busiest thoroughfares that assist drivers to get to their jobs, homes, schools, vacation destinations, and highways in an efficient and safe manner. Our county and surrounding counties have experienced a population growth, and the upkeep of these roads has been difficult to maintain due to a lack of funding and the consistent needs for repairs, leaving many roads neglected and unfixed. I urge you, Chair Barb, Vice Chair Stein, and committee members here to please vote favorably in fully restoring highway user funding back to our 2007 levels. Voting in support of HB 1187 will release these dollars, enabling us to better invest in initiatives like the blueprint for our schools, healthcare opportunities for our county residents, and many other programmatic needs within our respective jurisdictions. In my district, I represent 4 municipalities, and each one has been vital in the dramatic transformation of our economic growth and infrastructure. I welcome you to come and visit District 2, where we've had over $10 billion of investment, and all you will see are destroyed roadways, but in the back roads. Funding our highway user dollars will bring back more money to our municipalities and to county to complete the job we started. To do our jobs well, funding to fix our roads and infrastructure. I am wrapping up, sir.
Okay.
Funding to fix our roads and infrastructure must be at the table to be part of the answer. This is our last opportunity to correct this egregious loss of funding to the state that has resulted in a cumulative loss of $4.5 billion across Maryland. Please vote yes in favor of SB 726, HB 1187. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before you today.
Well, thank you for testifying. And let's turn to Mayor Selena Benitez with the City of Mount Rainier. Madam Mayor, welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Delegate Arten, for putting this issue and the various members who have been supportive currently and previously. And I'll echo the Delegate Anderson. If anybody wants to join to support this bill, he has stated the door is still open. My name is Selena Benitez, Mayor of the City of Mount Rainier. 100% federal support for HB 1187. It is essential and important for our highway user revenues to be restored. Our city, if you have not visited, it is the welcoming door to DC, the welcoming door to Maryland. However, our streets will not create a welcoming atmosphere because they're in very much need of repair. Every Thursday, I travel to town delivering free food to our residents and making mental notes of what streets, cracks, and holes we need to address as a city. I'll tell you this, I have an encyclopedia worth of documents of how much repairs need to happen. And not because we don't care about our city, but the reality is that every day a budget comes through, I have to decide whether do I put money to be able to help my seniors, support schools, be able to grant scholarships, be able to afford my staff, including my police department and my public works, or do I go ahead and address a street that I'm holding for dearness of hope that will hold a little bit longer? Allowing HB 1187 to pass will allow us to be able to give us the funding to be able to restore our streets, to be able to plan on the economic development that we have in the city. We continue investing and investing in our community. We can no longer keep holding on when user revenues are going to be coming back our way. For us, at least, it's essential because except for one of our streets, the rest of the streets heavily carry on the municipality. We cannot continue acting like all of our municipalities are welcome atmospheres. At this point, it is a safety hazard that we need to address. So I will close with this. Please do a favorable support on HB 1187, and I invite you to come and see our city if you have any doubts on the big need for these municipalities to be fully restore these funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's next turn to Kaylee Leger with Carroll County Commissioner's Office. Kaylee?
It's actually Leger and from Caroline County, but close enough.
Okay, you're right on both. Well, of course you're right on both scores. Well, welcome to the committee, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Barve and Vice Chair Stein and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Kaylee Leger, and I am the Executive Assistant to the Caroline County Commissioners. I am here testifying in favor of House Bill 1187. Caroline County is just one out of the many counties that has been negatively impacted by the 90% revenue share cuts that took place over 12 years ago. In fact, the 23 county share of funds plummeted from nearly $300 million in 2007 to only $40 million in 2018. When this occurred, Caroline County had to cut funding from other county departments to keep the Department of Public Works up and running to serve the citizens within our county. Since the cut, the county has had the inability to convert 152 lane miles of dirt roads to tar and chip. 2 bridges were unable to be replaced, and the county was unable to keep employee compensation to the industry standards, which has made retention and recruitment virtually impossible. As many counties have, Caroline has had to put projects on the back burner, such as tree trimming, line striping, and sign replacement. Caroline County's Department of Public Works maintains 72.6% of the road systems within Caroline County. The county is responsible for 954 lane miles of county roads, and the state is only responsible for 361 lane miles within the county. Most of the responsibility lays on the shoulders of the county, but we receive minimal compensation from the highway user revenue funds. We want to ensure that our roads are safe for our children, farmers, commuters, and our citizens, not only of Caroline County, but in the state of Maryland. In closing, the Caroline County Commissioners urge a favorable report on House Bill 1187. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, let's turn to Todd Turner with the Prince George's County Council. Todd, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you. I share with my council colleague our support of HB 1187. You have our prepared position statement as well as that of, I believe, the Prince George's County Executive, Angela Ossobrook, in support of the legislation. I'll be very quick. Obviously, we want to thank you for your past efforts to try to restore over the last 5 years highway user funding to both county and municipal jurisdictions. I agree with the comments heard earlier. This is the perfect storm for us to move forward with this opportunity because of the federal actions on the infrastructure bill. Obviously, hopefully a little bit of the surplus that's still around for the county, for the state, excuse me. As a former chair of our transportation committee, I also served on the Washington Transportation Planning Board and came before this committee years ago when you made the difficult choice of raising the gas tax in order to support our transportation trust fund. This is one of those rare opportunities where we can restore what had been the partnership between the state and local governments with respect to our use of transportation funding for highway, bridges, and other transportation needs. So I would obviously urge a favorable recommendation on House Bill 1187, and thank you for the opportunity. And just a quick shout out to my delegate. I don't see him here necessarily. It's the only delegate I've had since I've been in Maryland, Delegate Holmes, and my former colleague, Delegate Mary Lehman, who served with me on the Prince George's County Council, and other local elected officials around this committee. So thank you.
I'm not your delegate, but.
And my walking buddy.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, let's turn to Reuben Collins. Reuben, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes. You look like James Campbell, though. Jim Campbell.
Thank you.
Is Reuben Collins here? Okay. Are you Reuben Collins? Nope, that's Bruce Periano. Well, I guess
Yes.
Reuben Collins isn't with us, so we will move to Shane Moore. Is Shane Moore with us?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. For the record, Shane Moore, Chief Roads Engineer with Queen Anne's County Department of Public Works, here to testify in full support of House Bill 1187. Queen Anne's County, much like other rural counties, was 100% funded by HUR prior to the Great Recession. With that 95% cut, it resulted in us losing about a third of our staff, as well as a 5-year hiatus for any road resurfacing or any capital expenditures or capital projects at all. This is a hole that we have slowly been digging out of for 12 years. That we are able to get some one-time monies, which has been very helpful. We are basically sustaining by general fund tax dollars, which unfortunately has a systemic effect on the county's budget. Money has to be pulled from other departments to help fund us. It is very paramount that this highway user be restored. It's very important to our commissioners and is always included in our priorities letter to the state as part of their yearly tour. We urge you to support this bill, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Let's go. Let's see. Is there anybody else who signed up to actually testify? Did Reuben Collins ever come into the meeting? Okay, that's the end of the testimony. Are there questions from the committee? Well, seeing no questions, thank you one and all very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 11. Oh, Ann, did you want to ask? You're muted, Ann. Okay, that ends the public hearing on House Bill 1187. Let's turn to House Bill 73. Delegate Lewis, are you with us?
I am with you. Thank you,
Robin.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you
it
so
away.
much.
You have 4 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Chair Barve, Vice Chair Stein, and esteemed colleagues of the Environment and Transportation Committee. It's great to be with you. Delegate Robin Lewis here on behalf of House Bill 73, entitled Baltimore City Complete Streets and Safe Routes to School Programs Funding. This is a Baltimore City local bill. This is a bill with no fiscal note. This is an important mobility justice, mobility equity measure that you've seen before. In fact, you voted to pass this Complete Streets bill out of the House last year, and I hope we can do so again. I will bring to your attention that the bill before you has a slight amendment from the bill you passed last year. An amendment proposed by a Baltimore City Senator, Senator Antonio Hayes, adds safe routes to school to the bill. Now, what does this bill do? This bill says that our spoken commitment to Streets for People should be funded, and this bill provides a funding mechanism to pay for complete streets and also now safe routes to school. The bill works by enabling Baltimore City to direct revenues from automatic traffic camera citations into a fund to pay for the Complete Streets program and any safe routes to school initiatives the city wishes to undertake. Now, when you passed this bill last year, it passed unanimously out of the House. It is a model, I hope, for other jurisdictions that wish to take up complete streets policies themselves. In 2018, as many of you will recall, we passed a statewide measure to create a complete streets program and a grant fund. And one of our members here in ENT, Delegate Brooke Learman, was instrumental sponsor of one of those bills But we have a statewide Complete Streets initiative. We have at the Baltimore City level, we have our own Complete Streets program, but none of these are funded. So Streets for People means putting people first. It means investing in street designs that are safe, welcoming for all users. People walking, rolling in wheelchairs, or riding bikes, people pushing strollers, folks walking with crutches. Everyone should be able to move safely and freely, and that's what the bill does. I won't go any further because you've heard this all before. I will just mention that this bill is supported by the Baltimore City House delegation. You should have the House letter, as well as by the administration of Mayor Brandon Scott and his City Department of Transportation. I'll end with that and request your favorable support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. Always good to have a friend from the previous term visiting us. I'll turn now to former Delegate Jim Campbell, who is here representing AARP. And before you start speaking, Jim, I just want to note that there are no opponents to this bill.
So that means be brief.
That's exactly what that means.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to address House Bill 73. And we really appreciate Delegate Robert Lewis for sponsoring this bill. It's an important bill. AARP likes, one of the messages I like to put forth is that AARP especially likes the fact that this bill addresses the issue of equity for complete streets. That Baltimore has one of the highest percentages of low-income elderly in the state, and this bill says that policy should benefit all equitably, particularly the most underprivileged and underserved. So we're happy to be part of this bill. We're happy Delegate Lewis is sponsoring this bill again, and we urge a favorable report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brief enough.
Thank you, Delegate Campbell. Next and finally, Liam Davis with the City Department of Transportation. Liam, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. I think Delegate Lewis really summarized the benefits of this legislation and why we support it at DOT. I just wanted to let everyone know that we did, Baltimore City Department of Transportation did publish our Complete Streets Manual last spring. So that's, now official. And we do see, potential benefit of this additional pipeline that could, down the road lead to some additional revenue going towards complete streets. So with that in mind, we request a favorable report on this legislation. Thank you.
Terrific. Robin, remind me, what committee did it fail in last year?
I wouldn't say so much that it failed, Mr. Chair, that it never it never came to a vote. So the bill passed out of the House unanimously in 2021. It was assigned to the Senate JPR, where it was heard but never voted on.
Shocker.
They were kind of busy last year.
Okay. You're so nice. Okay, any questions for the sponsor or any of the witnesses? Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 73. Let's go to House Bill 535. Delegate Solomon should be here to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will be exceedingly brief on this one. And just want to also recognize Delegate Love, who chairs our local land use committee, who ably steered this through our local delegation. This is a bill that would apply to the Washington Suburban Transportation Commission, which is the body that oversees Metro and the regional transportation bodies in Montgomery and Prince George's County. This was a bill that was requested by our county executive, and then we amended it to, at the request of the Prince George's delegation, to include them as well. There's a provision right now in current law that actually term limits members who have served on the commission, which ultimately limits the universe of people that our county executives get to appoint. The county executives appointees are still approved by the councils in both jurisdictions. So there's still an existing oversight. What this bill would do is just eliminate the term limits. So if somebody serves as an alternate, and then the county executive wanted to appoint them as the voting member or vice versa, it would give them the ability to do that. This bill passed unanimously out of both delegations, and would urge a favorable report.
Thank you very much. Let's turn to Todd Turner with the Prince George's Council. Todd, welcome back. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, again, Mr. Chair, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm here in my capacity as Vice Chair of the Washington Suburban Transit Commission. I am the County Council's appointee to the commission itself. Just to let you know, you should have in the record a letter of support with the amendments that were offered by Delegate Solomon and approved by both the Montgomery and Prince George's County House delegations. This is simply a bill. We simply added on to the bill to make sure what's good for Montgomery County is good for Prince George's County, as far as getting qualified people to be able to serve on the WSTC and on the WMATA board if they are so appointed. So with that, Mr. Chair, we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions for either of these two? No? Okay, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 535. Let's proceed to House Bill 813, and I believe Delegate Moon is going to be here to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 813 is a local Montgomery County bill. Like the last one, it was ably handled by our subcommittee chair, Delegate Love, and it passed unanimously in the delegation. It's a bill to use school bus camera enforcement data to guide public safety improvements. In Montgomery County, all of our school buses have cameras that issue tickets for cars that don't stop. And in some stops, we've been seeing escalating numbers of tickets, but nothing is being done with that information. Instead, we've just been collecting the money. So the bill would have us actually report very specific data about the nature of these offenses and locations. And it has uncodified language whereby the county is agreeing to work with state partners to use that information to make improvements like moving some of the stops to more safer locations rather than solely relying on fine revenue.
Okay, thank you very much, Delegate Moon. Next, we'll hear from Shruti Bhatnagar with the Maryland Sierra Club. Shruti, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairman Barve, Vice Chairman Stein, and members of the committee. My name is Shruti Bhatnagar, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Maryland chapter of the Sierra Club in support of HB 813. HB 813 is needed because enormous number of drivers violate the law by failing to bring their vehicle to a full stop when a school bus is stopped in the opposing lane, thereby endangering students who may be getting on or off the school bus there. Having median dividers installed at the locations where school buses stop on state highways, where the violations frequently occur, would lessen the danger to students by allowing them to disembark from their school bus onto a median divider versus on the roadway where traffic may unfortunately be speeding by. We live in a car-centric culture where transportation planning, road infrastructure, and vehicle laws are largely focused on enabling cars and trucks to get to their destinations as swiftly as possible. According to the MDOT Motor Vehicle Administration's Highway Safety Office, there were 542 traffic fatalities in our state last year, including 132 pedestrian and bicycle deaths. Requiring median dividers to be built where safety problems now exist on our highways and allowing speed monitoring systems to be used where speed limits have been decreased would increase the safety of our roads by dramatically lessening potentially serious injury to people who may be entering or disembarking from a vehicle, walking, riding a bike or scooter, or riding in a car at that location. HB 813 would help bring about positive change. We urge a favorable report on the bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shruti. Next, Chris Conklin with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. Chris, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'd like to request a favorable report on this bill. We have worked closely with Delegate Moon and the other stakeholder agencies to make sure that this bill is implementable and provides actionable results that can improve the safety of bus stops, can reduce unnecessary fines to drivers who don't understand the need to stop, and to improve the coordination between Montgomery Public Schools and the transportation agencies that operate the roads on which their school buses operate. We feel this bill is appropriate public policy requiring reporting of violation locations, diagnosis of measures to improve the safety at those locations, and encouraging a safer environment for all of our community residents. So thank you for your time today, and I encourage a favorable report on this bill.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions for the presenter or any of the witnesses on this bill? Delegate Wyville has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could someone clarify what the exact request is for the speed cameras?
There's the provision on the speed cameras was removed by amendment. And so the bill solely focuses on school bus cameras at the moment.
Okay, so it was the speed cameras, it was removed.
Correct.
All right, I missed that. All right, thank you.
Okay, Delegate Foley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Conklin. You were listed as testifying favorable with amendment. Is your amendment included in the bill?
I believe the amendment is currently included in the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Salisbury. You need to unmute, Barry. There we go.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this bill up, Delegate Moon, but very, very quickly, if you are caught speeding or through the Montgomery County vis-a-vis these school buses, what's the penalty? In terms of points, in terms of money?
It's a $250 ticket. It's pretty high. And the one of the things the bill is trying to do is, in many of the locations, people do seem to know to stop behind the bus. But when you have the opposing lane traffic on some of these 6 or 8 lane highways, it can be a little bit confusing. And so the bill intends to clarify, through public education, moving stops and things of that nature, so that we don't have to just rely on $250 tickets.
Does to your knowledge, do the judges pretty well levy that type of fine, $250, or is there a lot of wiggle room in that?
Oh, I'm not sure actually how lenient people are if they're challenging these sorts of tickets, to be honest. But one of the things in the uncodified agreement is the county's going to look at warning system, things of that nature.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any further questions for the presenter or the two witnesses? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. That's the end of House Bill 813. Let's go to House Bill 1081. Delegate Boyce.
Thank you much, Mr. Chairman. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Regina T. Boyce, here to present on behalf of the Baltimore City Administration, HB 1081, Baltimore City Vehicles Laws Towing. HB 1081 brings needed clarity of Baltimore City's towing authority to tow vehicles blocking driveways, alleys, transit lanes, and parking facilities. Passing this provision in state law will allow Baltimore City to strengthen their local towing laws and regulations while still adhering to state towing laws. I thank the committee for their time and consideration of 1081 and urge a favorable report, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to turn it over to the administration to explain their need for this bill.
Okay, terrific, Delegate. We'll switch to Liam Davis. Liam, welcome back from a few minutes ago. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Boyce, for taking the lead here. This is a really important piece of legislation, as pretty regularly Department of Transportation and our elected officials on the City Council and even in our Annapolis representatives routinely receive complaints of vehicles blocking street access, blocking alley access, sometimes blocking transit lanes and transit facilities. And we really, in consultation with the city's law department, we found that adding this language could help us from a clarity standpoint in terms of pursuing local legislation. The caveat being, we will absolutely make sure that any local legislation that is sought on the Baltimore City level will fall within existing state towing law. So with that, we respectfully request a favorable report for House Bill 1081. Thank you, and I can take any questions if there are any.
Well, let's go to the final witness, and then we'll entertain questions, and that's Charles Parish. and you are listed favorable with amendments. So, Mr. Parish, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. It's always great to see you and the committee. I'm in favor with it. I would like to see, I've been doing trespass towing period for 30 years in Baltimore City, as well as other jurisdictions. I'm talking today as the legislative chairman for the Towing Recovery Professionals of Maryland. With this, there's already laws in place throughout the state from Transportation Section 21-1003A, person may not stand a vehicle in front of a private driveway. Baltimore City Code 22.3 says the rules and regulations of the tow board shall be the same, quote, the rules and regulations shall have the same force and effect as law. And under Baltimore City's tow board definitions of a trespass towing occurs when a tow company contracts with a private property owner to tow away unauthorized automobiles. So what I'm basically asking is that the issue has been, and with the new homes being built into the city, with these carports and driveways being added in that we didn't have so many before, the issue is it's taking hours and sometimes days for anything to even be removed from the driveway to allow them in or out, because of the city saying that only they can do it, but the requirements for them to do it are so harsh and strict for the private property owner that they're not able to do it. There's already language that would allow a property owner, including the signage under 2110A, that must be at the entrance. Our signs are minimum 24 by 30 inches, while the city signs are only 12 by 18. So we are in favor, but we would like to see where the private property owner can hire a licensed Baltimore City trespass tower to do these removals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It appears that Delegate Boyce has a question.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. And it's a quick clarifying question for Mr. Parish, I believe. I guess I hear you, but is there a concern that somehow Baltimore City would somehow take the jobs of general or regular towers? Because I don't see that as, I've got complaints right now in my queue of vehicles that, the city really just can't remove, but otherwise could remove because it is a nuisance or it is parked somewhere for X amount of time that, the community wants out because it's a danger or they feel that it could be a safety issue. So
the issue has been over the years, unless that vehicle is 4 foot in off the public street, even though it's blocking the driveway, the city doesn't authorize us to remove them. It must be the city, but at the same time, the city says they must have their 12 by 18 inch signs up and it must say tow away. If not, then they can't remove it either. And all the police can do is issue a ticket.
So you're saying that we need signs, and then you're saying signs are within state law?
The trespassing, the signage is required for trespass towing, which is 2 times the size of what the city requires. It's larger. And they must be placed at the entrance. So we're already established and set up by Maryland law to remove these vehicles. It's just that the city agency won't allow the private property owner who has a licensed tower, who many of us are also doing towing for the city. We go through the same process, but the city agency won't allow us to do it.
Interesting. I'm interested in to delve in this a little bit deeper, but thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for the sponsor or any of these witnesses? Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 1081. Let's proceed to House Bill 296. Delegate Jalisi, you have 4 minutes. Jay? I'm not muted, so Jay, are you out there? Let's go to, let's skip over Bill 1296 and go to Bill 1303. Delegate Motz.
Delegate Motz is not here yet.
Well, Delegate Lehman's bill has 13 witnesses, and I bet Hornberger isn't here either. Jay, are you there?
He's in the meeting.
Oh, well, Delegate Jalisi, let's do your bill now, 1296. Is he on camera? He's not.
No, he's off camera. Are we scaring everybody away? What's going on?
I don't know. We're such complete monsters. Somebody
Delegate Mott's just joined the waiting room, so we're letting him in now.
Okay, let's go to Delegate Motz's bills, and let's have somebody text Jay. He'll be up after 1314. So Delegate Motz, welcome back to the committee for House Bill 1303. You've got 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman and distinguished committee members. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you for your patience. The bill before you, HB 1303, is a short-term relief proposal for the CDL shortage. What it would do is it'd give the MVA the authority to reissue a CDL to anyone who had held that similar or identical license within the past 5 years. The applicant would have to produce a medical certificate, which would be concurrent with normal practice. They would be able to use that temporary CDL for 6 months after a state of emergency. MVA wouldn't be able to issue this temporary CDL until there was a declared state of emergency identifying the need for CDL drivers. Also, the CDL that would be issued would be limited to intra-state, so it would not violate any federal CDL standards. So you would have an intra-state CDL. This would help a lot of small, medium, and large movers and truckers and stuff like that. So I urge for its favorable report, and thank you.
Okay. Nobody else has signed up to testify on this bill. Any questions for the Delegate Healy has a question.
Yes, I do. The question is, would these be allowed to be used also for school bus drivers?
My aide just pointed out to me, I forgot to mention this would help the school bus drivers. I should have said that. This would be a benefit for them also.
And help, there's shortages there. Any other questions, Ann? I think she's good. That ends the public hearing then on House Bill 1303. Let's go to House Bill 1314. Johnny, again, only one person testifying, you.
I very much appreciate the committee's patience with me. I don't know how I have all these bills at ENT this year, but they're here. This has been brought to my attention for years. It's been brought up, and really it should apply to all vehicles at some point, but the vehicles right now that are catching the attention are the electrical vehicles that they're not constructed to have front license plates. It was brought to my attention that the state of California it did this sticker license plate pilot program. MBA mentioned that it would be something they might be able to work with. I'm not sure if they've testified in favor or opposition to this. I know digital license plates are on the move, and so the bill before you was drafted based off of a program that already exists in another state that's worked and functioned very well. And I urge the committee to favorably report this legislation. Thank you.
Well, I have to say this, I've been on 2 committees that have had license plate bills, and it is unusual to have a bill. Does this bill allow you to not have a front license plate? Is that what's going on here with this bill?
Oh, no, this bill complies with the front license plate, but it would be a sticker, kind of like a Johnny Mouth sticker, but it would be a license plate. You put it on the front of the vehicle.
I see. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you say that, because my car, a lot of Tesla drivers are in violation of the law, not putting a license plate in the front of their car, but we all got these little plastic things that you can stick onto the front of the car and then screw the license plates in. Are you proposing something that would just be a sticker that you would stick on the car rather than screwing it into the car? Is that what you're talking about here?
Yes, exactly. And I wasn't aware of that, but I've had a number of people come to me with complaints about the front sticker, the front plate requirement in Maryland, and do something about this. And I actually had a bill in this committee before where
the state police hate that.
Yeah.
Okay, Delegate Jacobs has his hand up.
Yeah, how you doing today, Delegate Max?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you for asking. I hope you are.
So, will this add to the aerodynamics of the vehicle? Will it help with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it wouldn't create any more wind resistance. It would be smooth and reflective, and it would be and versatile.
Do you?
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
So you're saying the front tag could be a sticker. Will the back tag be a sticker as well, or would that be a metal tag?
That would be a metal tag.
All right, so then you're going to have combination tags.
Correct.
Okay.
When on your vehicle though, your stickers, your year and month of registration, that's on the rear tag.
Right.
The front tag is a state police.
So what you're proposing in this pilot program is a aerodynamic sticker front tag and a metal rear tag that would have the month and the dates or year stickers on them.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm looking at your testimony and I see this California sticker that would, I see what you're talking about now. All right, any other questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, Johnny, you are free to go.
Thank you very much and great to be with everyone. Have a wonderful day.
You too, take care. Okay, is Delegate Jalisi with us?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I went for a cup of coffee.
Oh, well, all right. So Delegate, it's House Bill 1296. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Stein, and members of the Environment Transportation Committee. I come before you today to introduce my bill, HB 1296. And for the record, I'm Delegate J. Jalisi. I've also submitted an amendment to this bill, 493626/1, which should kindly be considered in your deliberations about this bill. Basically, with the amendment, my bill reduces the maximum penalty for driving without an active auto insurance policy from a current fine of $1,000 and 1 year in jail to $500. For the first 3 offenses, and for the 4th offense, it goes back to where it is now. My bill removes the jail term completely. And as the esteemed members of the committee know very well, the auto insurance premium in Maryland are tied to a person's credit score, due to which the driver with lower FICO score or no credit history pays more in auto insurance premiums. This negatively affects people with low credit history or new immigrants to our country. Both groups of people we need to be especially considerate about. Besides the financial impact, $1,000 fine, the 1 year in jail for a non-violent crime causes a major adverse impact on not just the driver, but the entire family. Therefore, I request you to kindly give a favorable vote and pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Okay, nobody else is signed up to verbally testify. So questions, I see Delegate Love has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Jalisi, are you aware that this exact bill with those exact amendments is sitting in judiciary and had a hearing several weeks ago?
Delegate Love, I did not. I know now, but as you know, I don't know if it's the exact bill or not, but it's happened to several of my bills that
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah, several
I don't know.
of your bills that
Yeah,
were filed by
I
someone
had a
else
bill
last year.
hearing.
Mhm.
I had a bill hearing at Economic Matters, and the same bill was being presented by two delegates. And like you tell me, this is the bill also which has, which is in two different committees, but that one was in the same committee. And I think
Yeah,
someone
this
else
bill-
also mentioned that there was another bill which I presented, I think a week or 10 days ago. Which
Right,
was,
that had been brought by another delegate before, like your bill here was brought by Delegate Deborah Dabris last year.
right.
So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that another delegate actually in this committee has this exact bill in another committee. And just to make sure that the committee is aware of that as well. So thank you.
But I'm sure it happens to a lot of delegates because these bills get filed and written up at the same time. So, and I don't know if it's the exact same bill or, I mean, that's something which is beyond my control.
Okay, Delegate Weigel has a question. Sarah, you were done, right, Sarah? Yeah, okay, Delegate Weigel, go ahead.
Delegate, you said, I thought you said it lowered the fee from 1,000 to 500. Was that the amendment? Because the fiscal note says it lowers it to 50.
Yes, I contacted the fiscal note people and they said they can issue a letter. Once a fiscal note is written, they can amend it. So I don't know what happened first.
Okay, but it's 500, not 50.
It's 500, not 50. Yeah.
Okay, but it's
the amendment. It's 500.
You good, Will?
All right, thank you.
Okay. Fraser Dalgo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that my comment was asked by Delegate Love. I guess the only point being that I think we had the same bill, Delegate Davis.
I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know if anyone else is.
We've been having some internet instability issues last couple of days. Anyway,
I'm good.
Dave, do you?
No, I'm good. If you can't hear me, that's fine. I'm good. I'll figure it out later. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to know if Delegate Jalisi has talked to the MDA about his bill, because I did talk to them about my bill.
I don't know.
That's exactly the same. Have you talked to them about it?
No, I haven't.
Okay, thank you.
The bill was brought to me by JOTF, and those are the people I spoke with.
Okay.
That's actually not true.
Okay, are there any other questions for the delegate? All right, seeing none, that ends the public hearing on House Bill 1296. Let's proceed to House Bill 1333. Delegate Lehman.
Many thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chair Barbe, Vice Chair Stein, and esteemed colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Mary Lehman, asking your favorable report on House Bill 1333. The bill amends a current statute that prohibits the modification of motor vehicle exhaust systems or other noise abatement devices that increase the noise above the car's manufactured level. HB 1333 includes financial penalties for first, second, and third violations. It exempts registered historic vehicles, which is a change of the last few years in legislative efforts to address loud vehicles. Noise pollution has become an area of greater concern in recent years because of its hazardous effect on human health, the environment, and quality of life. The noise produced by vehicle traffic is one of the major causes of noise pollution in our state, and it seems to have risen substantially with the increased number of cars on the road. Although the increased penalties alone, I recognize, will not eliminate the level of noise pollution in our state, I believe this is an important step toward reducing it. I recently received a letter from a constituent who I invited to testify, but said, no, you can go ahead and tell my story. And he lives with his family on Laurel Drive in Adelphi in Prince George's County. Laurel Drive is a lovely, well-established community off of Riggs Road, where many of the neighbors have owned their homes for decades. Riggs Road is a county road off of New Hampshire Avenue, and it is a cut through from Prince George's to Montgomery County to get to Interstate 495. And my constituent wrote to me, quote, "I have been shocked awake in the middle of the night by these unreasonably loud cars ripping up and down Floral Drive. In addition to my loss of sleep, the pets that I and many of my neighbors have are also adversely affected. And in some cases, they can require hours to regain their normal behavior. I have complained and I've asked for help here in my neighborhood against these loud speeders with no relief for far too long. It's high time that there be more substantial penalties assessed against these inconsiderate drivers and that they be required by law to meet both state and local noise abatement standards." So currently in the Code of Maryland, this is the transportation section 22609, it does prohibit modifying motor vehicle exhaust systems and driving vehicles that have been modified. Unfortunately, because there are no penalties attached to violating the statute, only orders for repairs, enforcement is difficult. By authorizing a police officer in this bill to issue both a safety equipment repair order and a fine of up to $400, that is the third violation, by the way. It starts with a $200 fine, moves up to $300, and tops out at $400. We believe this will be more of a disincentive. Again, it's a small step toward reducing noise pollution in Maryland. And I ask for a favorable report.
Okay, let's go to the first witness, Barbara Solner-Webb. Barbara, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Hi. Hi, hang on a second.
Hi.
Sorry. That's completely screwed up here. Sorry. Yeah, hi, Barbara Solner-Webb again. Sorry for keep coming back. This time I'm speaking as president of the West Laurel Civic Association with over 4,000 members. And we want to give an extremely strong endorsement to the potential legislation 1333. Our community has been incredibly much bothered by very loud road noise, including very late at night, that disturbs people's children from sleeping, disturbs just people in their houses, even with their windows closed, it's so loud. This kind of hot rodding, people enjoying going around with making this very loud noise, also induces speeding, which has been very, very bad in our neighborhood. The police have clocked a car going over 100 miles an hour on Bond Mill Road. Needless to say, they were not able to catch him. But it's all part of the same picture of people who seem to get their self-worth out of how loud they can make their cars or how obnoxious they can be. And we think that this is unfair to the citizens who have to put up with this, and highly endorse Mary's legislation that may do something to deter this.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, let's turn to Christiana Rigby, the council member, Christiana Rigby. Welcome back to the committee.
Hello again. Though I think this is the last bill I'm testifying on this session, so I will see you next year. But thank you so much for the opportunity to provide testimony. I represent District 3 on the Howard County Council, and I am here to express my support for Delegate Lehman's House Bill 1333. This issue really arises when the exhaust system of a vehicle is illegally modified to significantly increase the noise. While this practice has been illegal for Maryland in many years, this problem continues to persist. Over the last 4 years, my office has been inundated with complaints from residents and community organizations pertaining to muffler modifications and vehicle noise. The noise pollution from exhaust modifications causes residents a great deal of stress and anxiety, especially at night, as you've heard, and is often accompanied by drag racing and other dangerous driving behaviors. Currently, the deterrents are not strong enough to change the behavior. HB 1333 addresses that issue by increasing fines and requiring police officers to issue a safety equipment repair order. This legislation will give our local jurisdictions better tools to address this issue for the benefit of our community. In 2021, New York passed similar legislation to address exhaust modifications by increasing fines on both motorists and auto shops. that violate the laws on illegal exhaust modifications. I encourage the committee to consider enhancing the law by including auto shops under the prohibitions and penalties for muffler modifications. HB 1333 will aid our efforts to make our streets safer and more comfortable for our constituents. Thank you for your consideration, and I respectfully encourage a favorable report.
All right. Next, let's turn to Carl Dewalt with the City of Laurel. Mr. Dewalt.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to speak to you today. My name is Carl Dewalt. I'm beginning my third term as a City of Laurel council member.
Oh, okay.
I retired from the Laurel Police Department as a captain with 28 years of service. I've lived in the Laurel Historical District for the past 37 years. I am truly blessed and wouldn't want it any other way. The City of Laurel is in a unique location where prominent highways either surround or dissect our great city. I-95 north and south, Route 198 east and west, US Route 1 north and south, Route 197 north and south, Van Dusen Road and Conti Road, all encompass our 5 square miles. Because of that, when one or more, a group of these so-called small race cars equipped with a modified vehicle exhaust system travel our roads, they emit extremely loud, screeching, ear-piercing sounds, so it affects the vast majority of my constituents, especially during the night. As a city council member, my primary responsibility is to protect and improve every citizen's quality of life. House Bill 1333, sponsored by two of the best delegates in the state of Maryland, Mary Lehman and Jocelyn Pena-Melnick, gives definitive ways, means, and penalties that will aid in eradicating this noise from our neighborhoods and also properly address this quality of life issue. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Jocelyn, for having me speak today. And I know every one of my many constituents thank you too.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Next, let's hear from Karen Coakley with the Beltsville Citizens Association. Karen, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe she is present.
Okay, how about Bailey Clark? Bailey?
Hi. Yes, I'm here. I'm just a mom. I just live over here. I'm really sorry. I'm kind of nervous, but
fine, you're doing good.
So yeah, my 2 kids, dog, husband, and I, we've all been woken up several times by the cars that drive by. I have spotted on their cars how they have stickers promoting their Instagram pages and Facebook groups. And I went to those Instagram pages and Facebook groups and they brag about how they can race on homespun in Oakland Mills, how they can do J-turns, donuts, and figure eights in empty library parking lots. And then they don't post their faces. They don't necessarily post the location, but you can usually tell where it is. I can hear it all the time. It's not safe. I've almost been hit in the crosswalk at my street, crossing over to go to the lake with my kids and my stroller, and it was scary. So that's what got me involved in it. And I really just hope that something can be done, because right now it feels like nothing's gonna happen. We've been working on it with our community for a little while. There's 30 of us that meet, and it's just frustrating. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, let's hear from Jermaine Jordan from Upper Marlborough. Jermaine?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak, and thank you, Delegate Lehman, for introducing this bill. Over the years, the number of overly modified vehicles operating on the roadway of the state has increased. With the ease of accessing parts through online retailers and directions on how to modify vehicles being easily accessible through online forums and YouTube, more vehicle owners are installing illegal modifications on their vehicles. Many modifications made to vehicles are purely cosmetic and cause no danger or disturbances to other drivers on the roadway and the surrounding community. Modifications of exhaust systems is not one of those modifications. Vehicle manufacturers undergo extensive testing and certification by regulatory bodies to ensure the exhaust system on vehicles operate in a way that reduces the emissions of damaging greenhouse gases. The testing also requires that the sound levels of the exhaust system does not rise above a generally acceptable level during normal operation. With modified exhaust that causes excessive noise, drivers will be unable to hear necessary sounds around them, such as emergency vehicles responding to calls or other drivers honking their horn to warn of danger. The loud sound also distracts drivers and pedestrians, potentially causing them to become inattentive to their surroundings. Failure to have full attention when on and around roadways may cause danger for all citizens in the area. So I have worked in public safety for 15 years, and I understand that law enforcement's hands are tied under the current penalties, and a progressive increase in penalty is proposed in HB 1333 for the violation of the Transportation Article 22609 will be a better deterrent to violators of the law and demonstrate that the state of Maryland will not allow unsafe vehicles to operate on the roadway. I encourage a favorable vote on HB 133. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, and I misread your first name. It's Jeremy, not Jermaine. So thank you for testifying. Next, let's hear from John Becker from Rockville, one of my neighbors. John, how you doing?
Thank you, Chairman Barbay and members of the committee. My name is John Becker, and along with Delegate Jim Gilchrist, who's a member of your committee, I live at Americana Center, which is in downtown Rockville, surrounded by Rockville Pike, Route 355, and Route 28, Beers Mill Road. In relation to what other people have said already, every morning and every afternoon on a weekday during rush hour and beyond, we hear the vehicle noise modification, modified cars and vehicles. And on weekends, it starts in the morning and it's throughout the day until late, I should say early in the morning on a weekend. I got to tell you, this thing right here, right now, as far as our situation is concerned, is that you need to understand we are living in an area where there are a lot of people driving around with these kind of modifications. It covers all demographics. This is a diverse situation. If they ever wanted to tout this as a diversity achieved, it's all incomes, all ages, all genders, all types of vehicles, from the most expensive you can think of to somebody who's running around in a used car, it's years old. What I'm looking for is your support on this, because we have to achieve getting this under control. This is a quality of life issue. And I got to tell you, one other aspect with this is people who modify their cars, and I can assure you, I was young once and did this a long time ago in the last century. You modify your exhaust system for noise and things like that. The only way you can enjoy it is by speeding, either hard acceleration or speeding at speeds above 50 miles an hour or even worse. Driving 25 miles an hour, you ain't getting it. You're not achieving the goal of modifying your exhaust. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for your support for those of us who lived over here and those throughout the state to get a handle on this so we can start bringing back the quality of life. And I want to leave you with one little point here is that electric vehicles are going to be the mainstream here coming in the middle of the next decade. And those vehicles also need to have some sort of a noise so that pedestrians and things like that can hear them approach. I'm sure somebody's going to come up with an app that you can download.
That's an issue for a different bill. So, okay, well, thanks a lot, John. Let's go to Hector Rodriguez. Hector?
I don't believe Hector is in the call.
Okay, let's go to John Sang.
Great. Can I be heard by the committee?
Yeah, we can see you and hear you.
Great. Thank you, Chair Barbay. So along with other highly concerned constituents in Maryland in 2020, we created the Maryland Coalition for Highway Safety, and we're applying for our 501c4 status. So we are here to stay. Our coalition 100% supports the passage of HB 1333 and encourage you and the committee to submit a favorable response. We see excessive noise as a growing problem that's related to excessive speed, racing, and reckless driving, all wrapped up in the increasing perception that Maryland public roads are my private playground. We wholeheartedly thank Delegate Lehman for all the time she and her colleagues and staff have spent over the past 9 months or so listening to their constituents, researching the excessive noise problem, and developing a simple set of fixes in the right direction in the form of HB 1333. So Chairman Barbay and members of the committee, we're asking for your leadership on this issue. It's great that we have a hearing, but we really need our elected officials to So see and hear the same things that we hear and demonstrate your leadership in advocating for all Marylanders. When you consider the rights of Maryland constituents who deserve peace and quiet by virtue of the fact that we live here, respect the law, and pay the taxes, the clear majority. Yet currently, the actions of a relatively few perpetrators wreak havoc on thousands of people across the state when they willfully modify their vehicles for the sole purpose of making more noise, and lots of it. It's not about my muffler fell off and I can't afford the repair. It's not about antique or collector vehicle hobbyists. In race cars, if they want to race their cars and modify their cars, they belong on racetracks. You can see people taking their racing vehicles on trailers to the racetrack. That's what respectable people do. So we're not talking about an owner's misfortune or a hobbyist in any regard. We're talking about people who deliberately sell, buy, and or install aftermarket equipment for the sole intended purpose of swapping out a stock exhaust system for what's really like bling on their motorcycle or their car that puts out excruciatingly loud, harmful, and irritating noise. The Aftermarket Equipment Industry Manufacturer Association, they're around. They'll complain their customers have a right to enjoy their lifestyle and their sporting. But that's like the recording industry lobbying against, regulations to prohibit loud music or boomboxes on subways, trains, or planes. It's a preposterous argument. So the current laws in the books don't have enough teeth. HB 1333 will increase deterrence to illegal behavior and will give groups such as ours hope, as well as benefiting from the message that Maryland is not your playground and you'll pay a higher price for violating our excessive vehicle noise.
Okay, if you could start to wrap it up, that would be terrific.
Thank you, sir. So we appreciate your support for HB 1333.
Okay, next let's hear from Christine Crone from the city of Rockville. Christine, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Barve. Good afternoon, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm Christine Crone here on behalf of the City of Rockville. We would like to start out by thanking Delegate Lehman for sponsoring this legislation and working with us throughout the interim on the bill's provisions. This bill was a major priority for the City of Rockville. And over the course of the pandemic, the city fielded numerous complaints from its residents about the noise that comes from modified exhausts. The excessive noise was not just on major roads and highways, as other witnesses have testified to, but also within neighborhoods. The current penalty in statute for modifying an exhaust is $70, and the penalty for driving with an exhaust on a state highway is also $70. Neither of these penalties includes points on an individual's driver's license. We feel that the $70 is not enough of a deterrent, and that the increase in penalties as outlined in House Bill 1333, with the first violation starting at $200 for a fine combined with the repair order, is a reasonable deterrent going forward. House Bill 1333 gives our police officers another tool in the tool belt to combat this issue. We urge a favorable report.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Catherine McGraw from Adelphi, Maryland. Catherine, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Kay McGraw, and I live in the Hillendale neighborhood just off Powder Mill Road in Prince George's County. I am speaking to support Delegate Mary Lehman's bill to alter the penalty for modifying a motor vehicle exhaust system and authorizes a penalty of up to $400 per occurrence and the issuance of safety equipment repair orders. I hope this applies to motorcycles also. Our whole neighborhood and area has been plagued in the last few years by drivers of muscle cars who persist in modifying their car mufflers so they emit deafening noises. This is also associated with excessive speeding in the neighborhood and on nearby highways, including Powder Mill Road, which is a block from our house. We also hear noise from the Capitol Beltway, and this has been dramatically increased with the presence of cars with modified mufflers, drag racing there and weaving in and out of traffic. We can't even sit in our backyard anymore and enjoy a pleasant afternoon or evening. Some of these mufflers have spark plugs in them, which enable the exhaust to shoot out flames. Some even sound like machine guns going off. In order to get the full effect and maximum noise output, they resort to speeding. The speeding associated with these cars has become very dangerous, and we have narrowly avoided being hit by them on several occasions, the result of which would have been serious injuries or death. I think this may have already occurred in some other instances. The people who are modifying mufflers and speeding, almost all males, have no respect for others and apparently a great need for attention. They use their cars as a sign of power and sportiness. Their macho actions are juvenile in an attempt to assert their egos and manliness at the expense of others' quality of life and even safety. We need better enforcement of existing laws and perhaps even heftier fines levied for subsequent offenses, perhaps a doubling or tripling after 2 or 3 offenses. However, the police seem to be reluctant to do anything about the situation. In Britain, they've been testing noise cameras and giving those with illegal mufflers heavy fines. Maybe we should investigate this.
If you could wrap up your testimony, the committee
I
would
will,
appreciate it.
please. Others have spoken longer, so I'll take my last sentence here. In summary, we are tired of being threatened and intimidated by these idiots with modified mufflers and having our peace disturbed night and day by them and being endangered by their reckless driving. We deserve the right to peace in our homes and backyards and safety.
Okay, if you could wrap up.
Or on our roads or highways. We also request more attention to this by police and state troopers with many more citations and fines. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Okay, next let's go to Christian Robinson, who has signed up favorable with amendments. What are your amendments? If you could put that in your testimony.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm testifying today on behalf of the Specialty Equipment Market Association. I'm here to voice support for HB 1333 if it is amended. SEMA is the $48 billion specialty automotive aftermarket industry. It's made up of about 7,500, mostly small businesses. In fact, I would almost call them micro businesses under 100 employees, including 74 in Maryland. I want to thank Delegate Lehman for taking the time to meet with me and for a productive conversation about potential changes to the bill in the future. I also want to thank Delegate Lehman for exempting street rods and classic vehicles from the legislation. SEMA does not oppose Delegate Lehman's effort to enforce against those who would create a nuisance in the local community and recognizes that it's become a major issue, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. I can speak firsthand to the issues that I've experienced as a parent of a young child living in Silver Spring. Targeting repeat offenders with escalating fines and subjecting them to repair orders is a reasonable solution to the issue. After all, bringing a vehicle back into compliance should be the state's ultimate goal. SEMA's issue, however, is with the underlying exhaust noise law on which this would enforce. Under current Maryland law, as many have stated, it's illegal to modify a vehicle's exhaust system in a manner that creates more noise than it was originally manufactured. We find this to be problematic for 2 reasons. One, it creates hundreds, if not thousands, of exhaust noise standards on which police must enforce, as vehicles each put out a different amount of noise and a different range of sound. Also, the law does not prescribe an objective method for measuring a vehicle exhaust noise. In other words, it's at the sole discretion of law enforcement to determine if a vehicle is too loud. It's a subjective standard and frankly unreasonable to both law enforcement and the driver. SEMA's recommendation, and we've passed this on to Delegate Lehman in our conversation and follow-up, would be that Maryland's law mirrors California's method for testing and enforcing exhaust noise violations, which sets one noise limit, 95 decibels, which is the upper range of vehicles that are on the road today. We're talking cars that when they leave the dealership from Porsche and Chevy Camaros and Mustangs.
Okay.
And then it's tested under a Society of Automotive Engineers testing standard at an independently run facility by the state to determine if the car is too loud or not.
Okay, if you could begin to wrap up, that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm almost finished. If the vehicle is found to be compliant, a certificate is issued that allows 30 days to correct the problem to bring the vehicle, if it's not in compliant, 30 days to correct the problem and bring it into compliance. If it is, the ticket can be dismissed. So SEMA would urge Maryland to adopt these changes based on California's language.
Okay, we've got quite a few people who want to ask questions. Let me start by asking a question of Christine Crone with the City of Rockville. Christine, the City of Rockville has a police force. What's the practice in Rockville with respect to these noisy vehicles?
Thank you for the question, Chairman Barve. I had a couple meetings with Chief Burrito leading up to this session. And the bottom line is it's just very difficult to enforce. Like many others have stated, trying to catch the people in their cars, because it usually is associated with excessive speeding as well. So trying to catch them and then ticket them. They just pay the ticket. I mean, $70 isn't that big of a penalty when they're paying thousands of dollars for these parts to modify their exhaust. So we looked at increased penalties. We talked about trying to go after these shops that modify the exhaust systems, but we didn't really find a really good solution for that. So we felt that what the provisions in House Bill 1333 outline were the best way to solve this.
Okay, how many tickets, if you don't know the answer to this, I'd love it if you could check with the Rockville Police. I'd love to know how many tickets are issued in Rockville for this.
Yeah, I don't have that answer, but I will certainly get you that number.
That's terrific. Okay, first question goes to Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and please indulge me a moment. Is Ms. Bailey Clark still on?
Bailey Clark?
Yes, I'm still here. Sorry.
Hi, thanks so much for being on. Please don't ever denigrate what you do as a mom by saying you're just a mom. And since we're supposed to say things in a question, I will say, isn't it true, Ms. Clark, that a mom is a CEO, a CFO, and a COO?
And a cook.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I was thinking that same thing myself at the time. Glad you said that, Sarah. Delegate Frazier Hidalgo.
And dads too.
Huh?
And dads too. So, a few questions. One, does this, and I don't know whether this is for Delegate Lehman or others, does this apply to motorcycles as well, or just cars or trucks? And or what's the full breadth of definition?
Yeah, because Abate and some motorcyclists offered a written testimony against. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, though.
I perused it. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Delegate Frazier Hidalgo. I believe the way I read the existing law, it talks about motor vehicles, registered under, the state transportation article. So, the exemption talks actually more specifically about what's exempted: historic trucks, tractors, motor, homes, and on and on. I interpret it as yes, but I wonder if Jeremy Jordan is still with us, because he is, as he said, he's testifying as an individual, but he is currently a law enforcement officer. And if he's still on here, maybe not. Okay.
Yes, I'm still present, but I would have to look into the specific section. It denotes which the definition of motor vehicle is, and I don't believe that would include motorcycles as well.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask is because Abate had some interesting points about the motorcycle aspect of it, both, in my mind, both for and against. The next question I have is some of the modifications, and maybe this, Jeremy, this is for you as well. Do these modifications that are being done either to motor vehicles or motorcycles, but particularly cars and trucks, do they include modifications as in dealing with the catalytic converter of any kind, or is the industry trying to stay away from going all the way back to the catalytic converter? So is it the catalytic converter moving backward as far as the exhaust is concerned? Or are they taking it all the way to the headers, all the way to the motor?
So, yeah, if either Christian Robinson or Jeremy Jordan can take that question, I'd appreciate it.
I'll try to answer as best I can. Most of these modifications have to do with the entire exhaust system. So it will sometimes affect the catalytic converter, but many times they won't want to modify that because if the vehicle is new enough, it still has to get emissions testing on a biannual basis, and not having that catalytic converter would affect the testing. So that would be more issues for them in the future. So if you look at an engineer of the engine, it'll drop down into the exhaust and you'll hit the catalytic converter before you get to the remaining section of the exhaust system. It's normally in the middle of the vehicle. So after the catalytic converter is where they would straight pipe or glass pack different types of exhaust systems that create the loud noise in residents that causes the problem. So it's not too much affecting that, but it could if they decided to take it that far. If they have certain vehicles, they get registered illegally as historic vehicles, but that's a whole nother piece of legislation that is for another time.
Does anybody know, is it a violation of any federal law to tamper with or remove a catalytic converter?
It would be, this is Mr. Robinson, it would be a violation of the Clean Air Act to remove the catalytic converter. You'd be taking the vehicle out of emissions compliance. I'd also note that I think practically every state in the union requires that you have that installed and have a muffler installed in the vehicle. Oftentimes what you will see is that, and the previous witness mentioned straight piping, where they do remove everything from the muffler to the catalytic converter straight back, which has one application only, and that's really for motorsports and racing. I know another witness mentioned the legislation in New York from last year, the Sleep Act, they were having a major issue with straight piping, which can cause the machine guns like sound. And that's what that bill was specifically targeted towards.
The backfiring. So when you're referring to straight piping, are you referring to so you have the headers that go down, basically run into a catalytic converter, then they go from the catalytic converter. So when you say straight piping, you're not talking about straight piping from the headers from directly off of the motor. You're talking about directly off of the catalytic converter.
Yeah, deleting the catalytic converter.
You're talking about deleting the catalytic converter.
Yes, sir.
Which is a violation of federal law.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question goes to Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Delegate Lehman. This would also apply to commercial vehicles as well, right? It's not just personal vehicles. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, there is an exemption for street rod vehicles. But my reading of this is that the exemption is only for street rod vehicles that are historic vehicles. Is that correct?
I thank you for that. I don't know if there is such a thing as a street rod vehicle that is not historic, but again, I would defer to Christian Robinson, who has a lot of expertise in this area.
My understanding is it is two separate registration classes, and it has to do with both the age of the vehicle and the look and feel of the vehicle. I'd have to look at the code specifically in the state to remind myself of it, but sometimes historic can be anything older than 25 or 35 years old, while a street rod could be, and it's an original condition, in other words, a straight restoration, whereas a street rod might be something like you would think like a hot rod from American Graffiti, something that's been more customized, or a replica vehicle, which is for all intents and purposes, a new vehicle that's meant to look like an older vehicle, like a Shelby Cobra, one of the cars you would have seen like in Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I understand all that, but my point is are all street rods vehicles exempt under this legislation? Because the way I read it, they're not. It's just ones that are historic as defined by the law. Do I have that right, Delegate Lehman? You're muted.
You're muted.
I'm sorry. I thought I unmuted myself. Thank you for the question. That is the way it is written. I can have that clarified. That was actually a modification that I was already, or an amendment, I should say, to a bill brought by our friend and colleague Delegate Stewart last year. And it was, there was a lot of pushback against that. And I agreed with the rationale for that. And actually, the city of Rockville, in speaking extensively to this city, believed that it made more sense to exempt those vehicles, because typically, the ones that are registered with the state as historic are only driven. In fact, that's part of the law. They are only driven periodically, often to weekend events, to special shows or in parades and that kind of thing. And they are not the major source of this problem. I think most people are in agreement with that. That was the rationale for the exemption, but I will clarify the issue around street rods.
Okay, thank you.
Next question goes to Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for Delegate Lehman for this important bill. So I was also drawn to the abate testimony. And besides the argument, one argument they posed, which I won't even address because I find it pretty silly, is that, well, we're already doing this in great numbers, so please don't fine us because that would be inconvenient or fine us more. I don't really think that's really worth delving into, but their actual substantive argument against it, and Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo, I think, made sort of an oblique reference to this. The motorcycle enthusiasts, their argument is essentially this bumper sticker that sometimes you see, which is loud pipes save lives. The concept here is that a motorcycle is louder, then it will save the life of the motorcyclist, or at least reduce accidents because people will hear them coming. Now, I remember hearing this last year when I had a similar version of this bill, and it took me about 7 or 8 minutes of Googling to thoroughly debunk this notion. So, Delegate Lehman, is it true that because of the Doppler effect, motorcycles actually cannot be heard very well until they've already passed the driver? And yes, Chairman Barbee, I'll send you the research.
The Doppler effect has to do with light shifts at the speed of light, not sound.
So apparently, I'll send it to you, but it has to do with the change in frequency of a wave. And so it actually is applicable to sound as well as to light.
Yeah, but that you're taught, okay, that may be, but I mean, the speed of sound is hundreds and almost 1,000 miles an hour. I doubt that a motorcycle could travel fast enough to alter the sound. Yeah, go ahead and send it.
So anyway, isn't it true, Delegate Lehman, that there was a recent European study that found that in almost all cases, a driver inside a vehicle could not hear a motorcycle coming until it was already past them?
Yes,
yes,
I do believe that is true. Yes, Delegate Stewart.
Okay.
Thank you for asking the question. If I might, Mr. Chairman, I do want to tell an anecdotal story of being in Delegate Terraza's district just last weekend. I believe, if I'm not correct, Delegate Terraza, Columbia Mall is in your district. I was walking into one of the anchor stores with my daughter, and a motorcycle went speeding by on whatever that is, Little Patuxent Parkway, that main road. And it did seem seriously to pass first, and then was so loud that I almost jumped out of my skin. Like I bumped into my daughter. It was that startling. Yeah, there is. So my staff is showing me actually on a computer that there is a Doppler effect that is tied to sound. There in fact is. So
the chairman stands corrected about the effect.
And we will send you the link to that, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
Just one more. Yeah, just one more question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Vaughn.
Very briefly. Is it also true, Delegate Lehman, that the most comprehensive study ever done on motorcycle crashes, which is called the HURT report, found that motorcycles with loud pipes were not less likely to be involved in crashes, and in fact, they were more likely to be involved in crashes? Is that
yes?
True?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Delegate Healy. Delegate Healy.
Okay, I just unmuting. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask about. I'm convinced about the problem. I'm just really kind of focusing on the solution you're proposing, because you know that we've been looking at the possibility of having a must show. You know, if you get the ticket, you have to take a day off from work and go to court. You have to go to court, or there'll be a bench warrant issued for you. So that seems to be something that, without having these graduated fines and leaving the fines aside, just having people, the inconvenience of it seems to be something that would make more of an impact on this kind of person. And I wanted to know, did you look into that as an option?
Thank you for the question, Delegate Healy. I did not look at adding this violation to the list of what in law enforcement and in the judiciary they call a must appear violation. So I did not. That's something I would consider looking at in the future. In addition to, Mr. Chairman, I do want to remark briefly on Mr. Robinson's suggestions. I think he has some good ones about the California standard for maximum noise in the law would be a lot clearer, but that would be a bill for next year. Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Healy, for the question.
Yeah, are you done, Ann? I'm going to take the silence as a yes. Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And really quickly, I do like that idea, but following up on the graduated fines, I just wanted to ask one of the community members, and I'm just going to pick Ms. Clark if she's still here because she happens to be right in my district. If this is okay, and you said you had a group of folks that you're working with, do you guys have a sense of, are these, is this new people all the time, or is this like the same folks over and over again?
So I actually have, some pictures of the cars that do it, and I managed to get about 20 different ones, but on a daily basis, like there's the regular ones that come by, but when they race, that's when it's like different ones that'll show up in the evening time. But the ones that drive by, some of them live nearby too.
So they're like regulars. So maybe some of the increasing penalties might be helpful.
Some of them, yeah, are regulars, and they, from what I understand, they commute through communicate to each other when there are police on our street. They have warnings for one another. So.
Oh, wow. So it's pretty organized. And the other thing I just wanted to say, because somebody was mentioning the sort of, more urban areas, but the street you mentioned, Homespun, is a pretty suburban area, and frankly, a pretty short road for folks to be racing on, isn't it? Wouldn't you say that?
So it is, but it's connected to, I'm so sorry, my kids are home and now. It's connected to Oakland Mills.
Right.
And so from what I can understand, they start the race, like the revving and all the loudness on our side. They turn and then do the race up Oakland Mills. So they meet on our street, which is where the noise comes from, and on Cradle Rock. They kind of do like just a couple left turns, and then they end up on Oakland Mills.
Through a pretty suburban neighborhood where kids are crossing the street to get to school and to the lake. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate you testifying.
Of course, thank you.
Okay, I have some questions for, let me start with Jeremy. Jeremy, since you're a law enforcement officer, when you see these vehicles, what describe to me what you see? Is this are these typically situations where the catalytic converter and the muffler are deleted, or do you see other equipment that is inserted? What do you see in these instances?
So these vehicles are obviously highly modified. Sometimes you can see a lot of modifications from a distance. And that's, like I said, some of the cosmetic modifications, such as spoilers and stickers and things like that were other individuals testified to. But you'll hear them, just like they said with the motorcycles, before you see them. So in the enforcement efforts, you'll try to identify the vehicles. I testified to HB 102 earlier this year about the street racers. Obviously, a lot of those vehicles are modified and they're in those large groups. You'll attempt to stop them. Sometimes they'll run with no chase policies by most agencies. They get away. But if you do have the opportunity to stop them, issuing the fines is kind of just a slap on the wrist. I was actually reading through a couple forms earlier today where they were asking, what the modification laws in Maryland are. And a lot of the responses are, it's such a small response or such a small fine that it's worth just paying it and moving on and hoping not to get caught again. So a lot of times they're really obnoxious and know that no one's going to do too much with the violation. So $70 is a drop in the bucket when they're dropping thousands to modify their vehicles for these shows and exhibitions and races.
And I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood what you're saying. So in the course of spending all this money to modify their vehicles, do they typically delete the catalytic converter and muffler?
So we don't go so as far as to crawl under the vehicles, but they will a lot of times cut off the stock muffler, which is installed by the manufacturer to reduce noise and emissions. And I'm not sure if they're reduced or deleting the catalytic converter, but I know that, and you can clearly see that the muffler and the exhaust system has been modified, and you can hear it, obviously.
Okay.
So with these cars being smaller, you know, different Hondas and Subarus, things like that, without having a mechanic's lift or a jack to crawl under there, you can't see how far the exhaust has been modified, but they will have times that they're in shops and they have completely disassembled, beginning at the engine all the way back, and they're welding or installing different modifications that create the loud noises.
Okay, fair enough. Christian Robinson. So I'm going to ask you a question you don't want to answer, but I'm going to do it anyway. Why shouldn't we pass a law making it illegal for legitimate aftermarket equipment manufacturers to make these kind of modifications? For example, let me be specific. Why shouldn't it be illegal for a body shop or a repair shop to remove a muffler or a catalytic converter?
Sure. I don't think anyone would argue that you should be allowed to remove a catalytic converter. We certainly wouldn't. You can remove, there's a difference between completely removing a muffler and installing an aftermarket muffler that adds to the vehicle's performance while still abating sound. A lot of times the parts that you'll buy, say from Summit or Jags, that come from large manufacturers like Magnaflow or Borla, these parts have executive orders from the California Air Resources Board that say that you can install it on your vehicle and it will keep it within emissions compliance in California, which is more stringent than the other 49 states. As I know that the state's ability to have a waiver from the Clean Air Act has been in the headlines lately since it's been granted again, which is neither here nor there. You know, why we like California's system is it sets at one upper limit. You can think of it this way: if a Porsche 911 leaves the dealership in its stock configuration, it puts off 94, 95 decibels of sound when you're using that Society of Automotive Engineers test. If I were to have a Honda Civic that say puts off 75 decibels of automotive noise, of muffler noise using the same test, I modify it to put in an aftermarket muffler that is clean air compliant. It adds 10 decibels to the exhaust noise. It's still softer than that Porsche or that Mustang that's left the dealership, but it's now illegal, which is why we like the one upper limit, one standard for everybody. That we like it in California because you take the compliance question out of the hands of a roadside test. You take it to an independent party who uses this SAE standard, which is very technical, has specific angles that the microphone has to be used at, standards for the microphone being questioned. You get into barometric air pressure and ambient noise, and you can get a definitive answer as to whether or not the vehicle is in compliance or not. And that can be used in a court of law. It's great evidence one way or the other for guilt or innocence. And ultimately what California does is they have a fix-it system on top of it. So what they want, rather than just saying, you've paid the fine, you're free to go, we don't care what happens to the vehicle after it's left, you want the person to be brought into compliance ultimately, so that the vehicle isn't ripping through neighborhoods, disturbing the peace.
Okay, and one last question, which is sort of open. Maybe Jeremy is the best person to answer this, maybe Christine, I don't know. One of the witnesses, I think Catherine McGraw, maybe it was her, commented on detection systems in Europe, which sound like the sound equivalent of a speed camera or a red light camera. Are any of you familiar with that? And if you are, describe to me what those systems are like. I see Christian nodding his head.
I'm unmuting myself. Yeah, I am familiar. They're becoming increasingly popular. I don't know enough about the accuracy of the systems. New York City, Manhattan specifically, has a pilot program in place to use those noise cameras. I know a bill has been introduced in California that would create a similar pilot program for the state. I have questions as to the accuracy of it, if they're perfectly accurate and can deal with ambient noise. And there's one set standard, 95 decibels, for instance, which seems to be the gold standard that California and other states use. We don't have a problem with it. Our recommendation on that is that a fix-it ticket be associated with it to you can bring it into a controlled environment so that you can get a very accurate reading as to the vehicle's noise. Just because I don't know enough about the technology behind it to say whether it's how accurate it is, if there what sort of variance in terms of the reading that it would get.
Well, I mean, I think the reason a system like that might be useful is that somebody drives one of these vehicles, they arrive and they're gone, and you don't, unlike Bailey Clark, in most instances, you don't get a photograph of the license. I have to tell you, this is an issue which 4 years ago I didn't really care that much about, and now all of a sudden everybody's complaining about it, and I feel that we have to do something. I just don't know what.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a quick comment about, sure, because so many people remarked about the increased fines, that just increased from the current standard of $70. So there's actually a split fine in the law right now. The most you can be fined is $140, and it's $70 for just violating, the noise standard, for having a noisy, excessively noisy vehicle, and then another $70 for driving that noisy vehicle on a roadway. So 99% of the time, I think, is my understanding, is you would get the $140, but it's two separate tickets. And that has not been looked at, if ever, in years, or maybe that's the original fine under state law, which I think most people agree is not enough of a deterrent. So that was one reason for increasing the fines. But the other reason, and I talked, to a number of stakeholders, held a number of meetings with John Sang and others, with Jeremy Jordan. The other reason for the increased fines was the concern that with the fine and the repair order, that someone could comply and go, could change their car back, undo whatever they had done to modify it, but then would and do what they needed to prove they had it repaired, and then just reverse what they did and go back to the noisy standard, and there would be no increased fine from there. At the most, it would again be $140. So that was the thinking with that this might create more of a deterrent if you pay more each time. Okay.
Jerry Clark has his hand up, and that'll be the last question for this bill, and then we'll proceed to the last bill. So go ahead, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate, is this the same demographics of vehicles that they have the problems with every year in Ocean City, the H2O vehicles? And the second question is, I believe that you hit on something just a minute ago. A lot of these young people probably modify and change these mufflers and these systems on their own, like we did 40, 50 years ago when I was young.
Drilling a hole in the muffler.
Yeah, just crawling underneath and switching them out whenever we wanted to, and not a big deal. But I think that maybe this is the same type of vehicle we're talking about as to what the problem they have in Ocean City. And they found that unless the fines were extremely large, they didn't get much effect from fining people in the last testimony they gave us last year, wouldn't you say?
Yes, Delegate Clark, thank you for the question. So I can't resist saying, Mr. Chairman, I think some of the men in this committee are telling on themselves, but I don't know anything about drilling holes in mufflers, or I can imagine what that achieves, but never having done that myself. Delegate Clark, I think there is a significant overlap between the folks, and you heard it from some of the people that testified, the folks that participate in speed contests or these, stunt driving are many of the same people, not all, but many of the same people who modify their exhaust systems. As far as Worcester County goes and the law we passed a few years ago to try to help get at that problem, and I talked about this with my other bill, House Bill 102, on excessive speed and stunt driving. We allowed Worcester County and Worcester County only, as of right now, to make that a must appear violation, so that they believe, Ocean City Police and Worcester County Police say, the best and most effective deterrent has been requiring violators to return to Ocean City to go to court. And so that's the short answer. And to my answer to Delegate Healy, I did not include must appear language in this bill.
Well, thank you. And that was the answer I was trying to get from you. Thank you.
Okay, well, good conversation here, people. That concludes the public hearing on House Bill 1333. We will proceed now to the last bill of the afternoon, Delegate Hornberger's House Bill 1383. Delegate Hornberger, welcome back to the committee. You have 4 minutes.
Yes, good to see everyone. For the record, Delegate Hornberger here on military vehicles. This establishes a new class of tags, license plate tags for military vehicles. And the reason that we feel that this is important is because there's been a lot of back and forth between Maryland State Police and folks that seek to repair and get these cars back on the road because they have a different VIN. And they also, there's safety standards in this bill as well. They would all need to meet federal requirements to be on the road. And in many cases, they meet those. There's just questions about compliance. It sets up a nominal fee, one-time registration fee of $51. And all of the vehicles need to be available for sale to civilians. And it has to have that minimum 6-digit VIN. And that's basically it. It would just clear up a lot of confusion on these vehicles. If you've ever been to Mission Barbecue, it's a perfect example. They're referred to as a deuce and a half. And those type of vehicles, this would allow for them to have their own class and not have to try to fit into one of the other license plate classes. With that, I'll take questions.
Okay, Christian Robinson has signed up to testify in favor of the bill. Welcome back. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Once again, here on behalf of SEMA, the Specialty Equipment Market Association, to voice support for HB 1383. I want to thank Delegate Hornberger for introducing this legislation. As he mentioned, if enacted, the bill would allow surplus military vehicles that have been authorized for sale to civilians to be registered under a new class in Maryland for limited use, so strictly for car club activities, parades, or to go get repairs if necessary. Would not absolutely be allowed to be used as daily drivers. Frankly, we've seen in recent years that amongst enthusiasts and collectors, surplus military vehicles has become a really rapidly growing trend. And it's especially important to our member companies who sell restoration parts and accessories for antique and older vehicles, of which there are 74 member companies in Maryland. And we've seen a lot of other states adopt very similar pieces of legislation to the one Delegate Hornberger has introduced, including Virginia, Kansas, Nebraska, Tennessee, Nevada, and Texas. This would help foster a new marketplace for these vehicles in Maryland, and we ask for your positive recommendation for this bill.
Okay, thank you. Questions? The Vice Chair has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Delegate, thank you for bringing this bill. Delegate, I looked to see if MVA had any sort of testimony, and I didn't see any. Do you know if how they feel about your bill?
What was the acronym? I didn't catch the letters.
MVA, the Motor Vehicle.
Yeah, we didn't have any, I thought you said MVA. We didn't have any input from MVA. However, we are working with the Military Collectors Club, which is based out of Washington, D.C. And they gave some feedback as well. Just keep in mind, these vehicles are currently on the road now. This would just set up a unique license plate for them and then streamline some of the registration process. So this isn't a departure from the status quo. It just creates that standalone tag for this cohort, if that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Delegate Salisbury has a question.
Yep.
Unmute. Harry, you got to unmute yourself. There we go.
All right, there we go. Yes, when you talk about military vehicles, obviously you're talking about a Jeep, but also are Humvees included in that?
Yes, as Humvees do have a civilian variant as well as a military, as long as they meet the criteria for VIN and safety standards, they would qualify it. And something that I wanted to add too is that we do have, veterans that are extremely interested in renovating these vehicles. Oftentimes they worked on them while they were in the military. And this can be almost therapeutic in a way for them to reconnect with other soldiers and have a pastime and a hobby that is conducive to what they did while they were enlisted. But great question. Thanks.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Hornberger, this has a one-time $50 registration fee, right?
$51, that's correct.
Yeah, and so there's no more, that's it. That's the only time you have to pay any kind of registration, is just that one time. And forever the vehicle's registered, is that what you, yeah?
Yeah, unless the vehicle's transferred to another person. There are one-time tags issued by the MVA. They're generally for older vehicles, 50 plus years. For example, I believe there's a 90-year tag as well. And why we would apply that to these is because, let's be honest, military vehicles don't tend to be very fuel efficient. They tend to be operated only in parades, only at Armed Forces Day, very, very minimal use. And if you look to like Hagerty, which is a specialty car insurance company, even the insurance companies are putting limitations on the mileage that the vehicle can be driven a year. So very little use, often for ultra specialized activities and events. So that's why we feel a one-time tag is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And then another question. So you specify in the bill when these vehicles can be operated. And as you indicated, it talks about special events. It does have a category in here that says on occasional pleasure trips. And I just wonder how in the world that could be enforced. And what exactly does that mean?
Let him answer that.
Yeah, so great question. As we just heard on the previous bill, which with the gentleman by the name of Jermaine, these vehicles, if an officer witnesses, because they're again proximity based, they're driving these to and from their home. If an officer observes these vehicles being used incorrectly or outside the parameters of the tag, that makes it very easy for them to get pulled over and get a ticket because they're obviously operating in a manner that is not congruent with the tag. And then also the same thing for the insurance requirement, as I just alluded to. They're in violation of their insurance, and if there were an accident or someone to hit them, it would invalidate their policy. So the folks that are buying these vehicles, they're paying a premium for them. They're not looking to operate these outside of the what's set forth in the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there appear to be no further questions, so that would end the public hearing on House Bill 1383. Thank you, one and all. Another great public hearing with lots of good conversation. Announcements from subcommittee chairs. DFH.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motor vehicle will meet at 4:05. Gives everybody 10 minutes to go to the bathroom, and I got to make a call.
Oh, so that's your agenda. Any other?
The agenda is a call on one of the bills, not a play call. It's a work call.
Okay. Delegate Ann Healy.
Thank you. The local government subcommittee will not meet today. We'll meet next week, maybe Tuesday.
Any other subcommittee chairs? Okay, so in that case, any other announcements, or we are adjourned, and I will see you. I've got a meeting myself at 4 o'clock, so I will see you guys tomorrow.